mics. Here we go.
Where's the do I get to turn this controller on? Oh.
Did that show up?
Yeah, it is. It's right on there.
Well, we're live, so.
Oh, we are. Oh, we're live now.
We're live now, buddy. I'm just gonna move him a smidge.
Oop. Stay.
Come on.
Give us 1 second. We'll get into this.
Hopefully, I think audio is good across the board.
What's up, Chris? Sorry, we're super late. Had some technical difficulties trying to get audio working and everything, and got it the best we can get it. So. What's up, Sheron? How you been? That's good. You've been fishing a lot, I see.
She's gonna have to do.
Brian was nervous. Who's Brian?
The only thing I forgot to put up was one more light. We're close. I'm so sorry, everybody.
What's up, Brian?
Oh, we need this.
Yeah, we gotta put the fan on. It's hot down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that. Hopefully it's not too loud. Woohoo!
It's empty.
What is it?
Monster.
Rowdy in here.
Yeah, SKB's in the house tonight.
Do you want one of them? I know you do. It's not even a question.
Sure, I'll take one.
Get her started, bud.
Alright, guys. Tonight we got a special guest, Sheron. He's here with us. We're going to be talking about tournament fishing and prepping and just getting everything ready for what you need to know if you're going to go do a tournament. So, waiting for Sean real quick. He's just grabbing a drink or two. Oh, two. Okay, good. Looking at the animated character, a rocket launcher on your wrist. Yes, it's a rocket launcher on my wrist. Oh, right off the back. Have you fished at this lake? Ask him when he's getting an aluminum rig. You do?
Yeah, I do.
Dang. Holy crap. Yeah, I got one. And, oh, damn.
Yeah. Fiberglass and
The boy's muted for us. They can't hear Sheron. Oh, no. Oh, no. Hold on 1 second. Give us a sec. You guys can't hear him at all? It just says turn. People are saying turn him up.
Like turn down what?
They're all saying he's really quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. see or
Yeah, got me to the audience. I can't say.
Yeah, no, we want your secrets.
You get video though, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, you're on the stream video. Oh. They said they can't hear him over the background music. Yes, David, I did do it skateboarding a while back, but I'm not a teenager. Where you going? Where's that?
Oneida Lake.
Oof. Oof. We drove past it.
Yeah, I did for like a few years. I always wanted to go over there. Then I could have went to my first Bassmaster Open over there. We're not playing that year. I was doing both tours at the string series at the time in the Bassmaster Open. Obviously, I didn't cash the check, so we ran out of some cash. And it was funny too because that lake was unlike the other bodies of water. I was basically like Gary, like too.
Yep.
It wasn't any fun. I don't I guess shower with largemouth. And I couldn't go. Then I went on a hiatus after that.
Oh, God, yeah. Hey, they said they can hear him now.
Okay.
Chris from Aluminum Boat Series.
can everybody hear him fine?
Can everybody hear him fine?
Sounds like he's coming.
Okay, you see my headset now.
Whoa. Where did that come from?
That's weird.
Yeah, you still there?
That was me.
Oh, okay. That was you?
All right.
Yeah, background music is allowed.
Okay. Background. I get any beat.
Mike Klassen said, if you kill the tunes, you should be good.
Problems.
Sounds like his head isn't alive well.
They're here through the TV.
Oh, really? Is that better now at all? Well, Jacob Davies said that's better. Mark says, I think we're hearing him through the speakers. But you can hear him. Can you understand what he's saying?
You meaning me?
Yeah, you. He needs to talk.
Oh, yeah. That's the question.
Ask him to sing a song so he can.
Current status right now, let's see here. Coming off a nice little money maker by catching a nice 3.5, almost 4-pound bass last night. So
Ooh.
basically, I money for the family, feeling good about that. Tomorrow's Friday. I'm doing a lot of map study for the next few days. Then I'm going to Lake Oneida next weekend for a couple of days, and then back home for the week. Head out later that Thursday night. Start my practice over the weekend for the second stop next Bassmaster Open. Got to do better than I did in Virginia. Feeling like I'm going to. I feel really good. I like this lake. I can fish to my strengths. I can go fish smallmouth, and I can go fish largemouth, and I don't have to worry about going out into the open, into the abyss, and fish a lot of deep water, and feel all the waves and stuff like that. So really, really excited about this one. So right now I'm just trying to figure out little key areas that I want to go hit up this weekend. So I'm looking at map right now on my phone right now. I'm looking at my hummingbird charts like that. You probably can't see it. I'm not sure how it looks on the screen, but it's a pretty good app to download on your phone, and I can sit at home and do some map study and mark some waypoints and have a good strategy to go check out when I get on the water before I have to get on the water. So really helps out. It's cut down my practice a lot, and I'm getting better at it. So I also use a couple other maps too. Use my Navionics app. And then I use the C map on my boat too. So I got 3 different digital maps at my disposal to prepare. And that helped me on the James River. I was able to go right down there and find a primary and a secondary pattern pretty quickly based off of just map study. I was kind of looking at my map during the drive down. It was like a 9.5-hour drive down, and
Jeez.
rest area, chill out, and open up my phone and start looking at my strategy. Which is really key for tournament fishing, particularly on that level right there. You don't want to just get down there and start figuring things out. You can start, months in advance. As soon as you put that deposit down, things get serious. As soon as you put that deposit down, that's when you should get things in motion. So I put my deposit down in January, and kind of here I am, getting pretty excited. So that's what's going on right now, current situation.
Damn, that's a lot.
Nice, man. All right. So, first and foremost, I'm very sorry. It has been a very trying month, really, now at this point. Between work, and then now this. Sorry, guys. Really long story short, I have an audio splitter that was supposed to make it so that not only would the call from Sheron come through to you guys like perfect, like our mics do, but it would also come through to headphones for the both of us. And I ended up being on a call with one of my good buddies from my gaming days for 20 minutes.
He's
half
dodging
an hour.
tornadoes right now.
Yeah, he's in Virginia. He's literally just dodged 3 tornadoes, and he's still got on a call with me to try and help me figure this out. And he was like, dude, you literally have everything set up perfect. I cannot tell you why it's not working. So that's just me and my luck. But so we found a workaround for the time being, and what you can't see behind the camera right there, we have a 42-inch TV, and that's what Andrew and I use so we can watch the stream and see the chat in real time, the whole 9 yards. And you're hearing Sheron through the TV speakers, which are cranked, what was it, 80?
70-something.
70.
I don't know.
Wow.
I got room. I can go louder if we need to, boys.
It's like you're right here.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, the speakers for the TV are like 2 feet behind our mics. So I'm really hoping this will be good. So, but again, yes, Mike is spot on. That's the technical equivalent of junk fishing. We made it work.
That's right. Make it work, man. Get that limit.
It's my life.
So, all that said, very, very sorry again, everybody, for the delay, but we got it sorted out. So, late start is better than no start. We're going to roll into it. Let's do a proper introduction for our friend here, Sheron. Sheron is another New Englander, lives down in Massachusetts, been big on the tournament scene for several years now. I know, Sheron, you kind of just lightly touched upon a little bit what you're doing now, but go into the backstory of you, buddy. And
Let's see, man. I started tournament fishing in 1998. It's kind of funny how I found my way into the tournament game. I'd always been fishing. I started bass fishing when I was 12, so I'm not really dating myself, but it's got about 35 plus years of fishing freshwater waters all in New England. I grew up in the Worcester area, then moved out to Shirley, Massachusetts, and pretty much fished like every pond within the 25-mile radius. Kid you not, I'd hop on the train tracks and just walk down the train tracks, find ponds, ride my bike with one hand, hold a tackle box, and go fishing. Played a lot of basketball in elementary, junior high, college, played college basketball, but was always fishing. To get in the tournament scene, it was hard. I was trying to figure out how I can get in someone's boat and stuff. I was seeing guys on like Lake Quincy, and Webster Lake, and I'm like, how do I get in? So I was going to a practice one year at Becker College in my sophomore year, and I was going to the cafeteria to eat before practice, and I seen all these guys with these hats on, and they had lures on and patches on their vests and stuff, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing here? And they're like, oh, we're here for this seminar, this fishing seminar, and it was like the original bass fishing techniques. Back then, they used to go to different venues within the state, like they were going to Becker College, and then the last one they went to was in Westboro at the I'm not sure what the hotel name is back then, but that's when I first met Ike. It's back in 2003 before he won the Classic. I met Joe Thomas and Don Iovino. But so I'm talking to these guys trying to figure out like how they're competing, what they're doing, and they're like, go to the show. And there was a show at the time at the Worcester Centrum at the time, and so I went down there and I met KVD, and I met Sandy from Northern Bass Supply, and I'm like,
Sandy.
how do you get in the game, and they pointed me to the Mass Bass Federation at the time, joined the club, and fast forward, I hopped in a couple of different clubs and just started getting my game up, hopping in the back of the boats and saved some pennies. Kept flipping crawdads and built a boat, a 13 foot 9 inches sea nymph boat. I built it into a bass boat, put a aerated cooler in there, and painted the sides camouflage. And people were trying to say I was duck hunting, but I could get over a bass. The bass wouldn't see me, you know. And I had an aerated cooler for my live well, and jumped in the tournament scene at Barton's Cove and got DQ'd after I caught a fat bag because went behind some island, whatever. At the time, it was supposedly off limits, but
Oh no.
it wasn't off. It wasn't off limits. 'Cause I was in the tournament the week before, and the EPO were right out there, and they said you could fish. But make a long story short, you know, jumped in the club scene, worked my way up, made it to my first fish offs in like 1999, I think it was, or 2000 on Champlain. Was in top 3 the first day, then realized that a guy like me gets motion sickness, and I got seasick the second day. And it's been my what happened? Video. It's been my nemesis ever since then, you know. But basically for like last 20 years, I've been just kind of working my game up, trying to get in any kind of events I can, hopping in different boats, getting in different bodies of water. Jumped really in the high level when I got my legend boat and didn't do so well and had to fall back, take a hiatus, build the brand up, own my boat, you know, and get my day job skills up. I'm a systems engineer, and now I'm trying to go all in and qualify for elites, man. So you got to start small and work your way up, but it's a plan. It's almost like a lifestyle, man. You can't just go in and out. You got to take the highs with the lows, and eventually you can get somewhere and make something for yourself. So that's what's up with me.
Nice, man. So how many years, just to clarify again, how many years have you been doing like the opens, both the Bass Nation opens, and then correct me if I'm wrong, you also did
like strength series. It's changed.
Yeah,
now it's
the
MLS
FLW
Big
ones,
Five, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I did FLW series events. I did 3 Bassmaster Open events prior to that. The first one was on Chesapeake Bay. I met
Title fish.
Andre
Right.
Brooks. I'm not sure. Andre something. I can't think of his name, but it was the owner of Reaction Innovations, you know, Sweet Beavers and stuff like that.
I love that
It was a
company.
crazy event. Greg Hackney was down there. It was a big event. You know, fishing was really super tough. It was Chesapeake Bay in April, and it was like really tough.
Oh,
And then I didn't do anything that following year. I did a couple strength series events. Found myself down in Kerr Reservoir. Found myself competing on Lake Wheeler in Decatur, Alabama for a strength series championship. And the day before the championship, somebody hit my boat. Like this guy just ran into my boat, bent my trailer in half. Boat went up in the air and flipped around, and
Jeez.
and that was it. And that's actually how I got my legend boat. But I've been competing for about almost 20 years or so. Fished a couple FW series events, a lot of strength series events, you know, and a couple BFLs, you know, just kind of working my way up. You know, now it's opens or bust.
Nice, man. Well, for Andrew and I, we've won a couple of 5 and 6 boat tournaments ourselves in our time.
Couple.
A win is a win, man.
Dude,
A win is a win.
Right, seriously, you get. I mean, no, we actually did pretty well last year. We did. We finished okay on a couple of Bass Nation tournaments the last few years. Myself and Travis Rocket, who is a licensed guide up here in New Hampshire. We've done like really well on like Newfound Lake, a couple of good events on Squam, but Newfound we took a 1st/2nd place because it was 2 tournaments in one. New Hampshire Bass Nation Double Down. 54 boats. We had the second heaviest bag. We bought into both. The guys that had the heaviest bag only bought into one.
Okay.
So we took 1st in the last cast club and then 2nd in the New Hampshire Bass Nation. We won like $2,000 for the day.
Nice,
good.
And we had second biggest fish of the day. So because they only, they pay out either split lunker or 1st and 2nd biggest smallies, we had the 2nd biggest smallie. So it was a good day.
Nice.
That's the extent of my tournament fishing though. I fish a Bass Nation once a year. Just on the New Hampshire level, and then we fish club events where we can sneak them in. Merrimack Valley Bass Anglers, bunch of good dudes.
Yep.
We're doing the Bass Nation this weekend as well, double down on Wake Winnipesaukee. So the timing of this, especially with you just coming back from a Bass Nation event, made this tournament topic appropriate. And I just don't want to talk about tournament tips, but also like, you know better than most, like the variety of forage and structure.
A lot.
Dude, I mean, never mind just in the entire Northeast in general, or New England, or, like Mass, Maine, New Hampshire, like just in New Hampshire alone. You go 2 different lakes 20 minutes away from each other, and it's wildly different for what the main forage is and exactly how the fish relate and everything. So that's one of the, that's what the plan is for tonight.
Okay.
So before we get into it, I will make this a lot quicker than normal because we got such a late start. But we always like to do a recap of what we did this past weekend to kind of give some people insight as to what we have found to have been working out pretty well. And I'm going to start because I had a very busy weekend, but Friday we fished in downpouring rain and went right back to the old Texas rig cross. Man, we tried a bunch of moving baits. We figured wind-driven rain. What?
Where'd we go?
No, it was me and John. John,
yeah.
the owner of
How
Wicked
was
Custom
I?
Rods, and I. You were working. It was Friday.
Oh yeah.
Nerd. We went to Little Kettle Pond, southwestern New Hampshire, and water temps were still warm. 6 a.m. and they were still 78 degrees. And it was like when that first rain started moving in. And we figured like, okay, wind-driven rain, maybe moving bite. Nope, but Texas rig crawl on the outside edge of weeds was like the ticket. And we started smashing them. I lost a giant late in the day. John lost a big one. But it's weird. Like one of the things I've talked about a lot for those watching the last few weeks is we're in that weird transition, right? Where they're going from that late post-spawn into early summer pattern. So they're starting to transition deeper. But depending on these wild weather swings, you got to be willing to look from inches of water to, you know, like anywhere from like
That's
6 inches
true.
of water to like 20, 30 feet of water, depending, you know, relative to how deep the water is.
It's
So
not deeper.
that's what we did. And we ended up finding them staged up on the outermost weed edges in like 3 to 5 feet of water. Like we found that same kind of layout for where the weeds were, like on the far outside edges, but the depth just didn't line up right. You know, some spots it was 2 feet deep, other spots it was like 10, 12 feet deep and nothing. But like, man, that 3 to 5 foot was absolutely consistent. And
You know,
just,
it's funny you say that. Edges have been working for me, and that's what you're talking about right now. So if you look at just with the spawn and the post spawn, when the fish come in to spawn, they'll go all the way to the shore, and then they work their way back out. So if you have inside grass line, right, that's where you're going to see the first row of beds. If you have like a sandy, rocky flat, once that sand rock starts to meet, that's where you're going to start seeing the beds at. And so it's an edge effect, right? And then once they're done spawning, they kind of move out into grass or it's deeper water, but they're going to the like outside edge, you know. So
yeah.
So right now in the last few weeks, I've been catching fish on like a grass edge where it bordered flooded brush, which bordered the river channel, right? And then on Lake Shirley, just yesterday, and when I've been going out there, I've been catching fish like in about 8 to 15 feet of water, but on my fish finder or, you know, on my 360 or whatever, I'm seeing white, I'm seeing a hard bottom, and that's the defined edge where the fish are at. And just over at Lake Sebastian last week, I was in a grudge match over there and fishing lily pads with frogs and nothing. But once I went out to the main lake onto the edge of the coontail in about 7-8 feet of water, we caught 95% of our fish, you know. So no matter what the depth is or even the type of cover, just going to that edge right now is like can increase your chances because that's kind of where majority of the fish are at.
Yeah, I've noticed that too because I was fishing Friday after work. I think it was
Yeah,
Friday
because you
after
went
work.
out in the afternoon after John and I got back.
And I was
we were
getting
drenched.
them pretty much on. Well, they were in like 15 feet, but it was, you know, that pond.
Oh, yeah.
It comes out a lot with grass, and then it drops off to the deepest point, and there's no grass down there.
Yep.
Besides, like maybe a couple inches, but where the long grass pretty much ended is where they were all in, but they were in 15, almost 17 feet.
Yep.
Is where I was getting them out of on drop shot, right on the edge.
Right. It's crazy, like, but edge of the weeds, like
Right.
fairly
Still-
consistent, but
still
sometimes
on the
that
edge of
depth
the
can
weeds.
vary relative to like what your depths are for those bodies of water.
Right.
Yep.
It's like that
You're
spot.
locked into the depth. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So that spot you were fishing.
That's a tiny pond.
Yeah, but they're like the majority of that whole area is what, 25 feet for a lot of that chunk? 20 to 25
I think
feet?
it maxes out at 21.
Okay, sorry.
Pond's
There's a
about
hole. There's
20.
one hole that comes down to about 25.
Yeah.
But yeah, a little over 20 feet. Whereas the pond I was at, like the average depth is more like 15, 16 feet.
Yeah.
And that's maybe even a little too deep.
Right.
So that, I don't know. It's still off a little bit, but
It's,
yeah, regardless,
it's the
outside edge
same,
weeds.
Same thing though.
Right.
Just different pond.
Besides that, like that right there, literally the same day, 2 ponds, 15 miles apart.
Yep.
Same structure. I mean, they're kettle ponds in southern New Hampshire. It's all the same forage types and everything. But that average depth just being a little bit different, you can see how differently the fish set up on the same exact day. And just slightly different. That's why, like, I keep reiterating that point. Like, you got to be flexible right now in that transition, right? We really haven't had that like really good, consistent hot weather to push like the thermocline down and really warm up a ton of that upper part of the lake. So they really haven't moved out into that deeper water yet, but they're starting to. So depending on what the weather's doing,
they're kind of doing this,
like,
up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. They don't know what the hell's going on because we don't know either.
Right. So stay flexible. And then to further reiterate that point, Sunday, Andrew and I went out, and our buddy Kyle and Travis were out in their boat, and Bite was on fire out deeper first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
And that pond is even deeper than everything else we were fishing, a little bit clearer, slightly different forage, and then everything shifted up like 10 feet.
Oh yeah,
because they were hitting them about 20 feet in the morning, and then everything we caught was like 8 to 10 feet.
Everything on Carolina rig in about 18 to 20 feet.
I was on a big winter swamp on Monday. Went up there because I knew the weather was adverse. Right, it's going to be kind of gray and rainy out, so I knew that there was going to be a lot of people out there on the lake. And actually was right. Kind of didn't have it to myself, but I think I counted 5 boats at the sandbar. If anyone knows what I'm talking about with Lake Winter, there was only 5 boats there on the 4th of July.
Yep.
On a Monday, so that's nice. It's a lot of pontoon boats out there, but as far as like just a lot of
so it was a slow day.
Case, but I was out there and I caught some fish on the edges of rock piles in about 15 to 20 feet of water. It's funny. All the years I've always fished up there, it's kind of just fished the buoys, and that can get you some fish, but with some electronics I have now, I pull to the buoy and I'm like, oh, there's a rock pile another 20 yards out, and that's how I caught all my fish. But again, it was still the edge effect, because you can see the sand and mud, and then I can see where the rocks start, and like right there was where I got fish at, and that's where I saw bait at. It's where I got topwater action, spinnerbait action. So it was crazy, but you can tell that they're not fully out in deep water, not really in the shallow water, but still on that first outside edge.
Yep. And I don't want to elaborate too much because I'm not sure who's watching, but I found a lot more of that yesterday. Not yesterday, the day before.
I'm sorry, I was.
It's important, but
somewhere.
not for anybody else watching. We'll talk about it next week. So, and then yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. We could probably elaborate further, but it's already 8:45, and I didn't want to spend too much time in this because we got such a late start. So, but all 3 of us are consistent. Right, all over the place, all over southern New Hampshire, Lakes Region, New Hampshire, like those kind of first breaking points have been pretty damn consistent and key. So for anybody going out this weekend, just keep that in mind. You don't really have to go out that far yet. Not yet. Hasn't been that warm. And especially with all this rain, a lot of those fish are probably going to pull back up, especially largies on our smaller like kettle ponds and stuff. The deeper, bigger lakes, it's a little bit harder to pin down, at least for me. But, your smaller ones, like a couple 100 acres or less, dude, yeah, move up. Especially those largemouth, you should be able to get like, I keep saying it every weekend, but that moving bait bite should be pretty good. It hasn't been for me, but at some point,
it's kind of weird, man. It has been too well for me either.
Oh, good. It's not just me then.
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head when you're talking about Texas rig baits like crayfish and stuff like that, because depending on where you're at, once those fish are done spawning, they do crave protein more than they chase minnows and stuff,
Yep.
So they're eating crayfish, and I was catching some fish with jigs and Texas rig crayfish, and then the last 2 weeks, actually, right after I was up at Lake Erie, up in the bay, I didn't catch any smallmouth, but in the bay, I was flipping grass, and they didn't want the crayfish baits. Although the smallmouth out in the main lake were eating, some crayfish baits. I was catching on my larger with worms, and what that tells me is, okay, they're done spawning, and then once they're completely done spawning, they leave the crayfish alone. They do go after the pelagic fish. They do start going after the bayfish and stuff like that. And the worm, it's not imitating the crayfish at all. It's imitating a minnow, especially the way I'm moving it and just the way it's streamlined, So that shows how that forage base changes, and which leads me into like, around here in New England in general, man, you can go up to Maine, and you have smelt, up in Squam, so you have smelt, and then you get to like Lake Shirley, they have bluegill and golden shiners, and then perch. You go into like Webster Lake, and they have alewives, and they have 3 different sizes of alewives. Believe it or not, you don't see them over the course of one season. You see them over the course of a whole fishing season. But if you're on that lake a lot, guys have done well. I know guys can attest to this, but 3 different sizes of alewives on that lake. You know what I mean? And but that's like 5 different types of bait fish right there. And then you get into like places like on the river. I'm not really concerned with bluegill. I'm using frogs, frogs and rats and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of forage base altogether. But if you just think about that right there, just within the New England area, that's like 7 different types of baits. And that's not even taking into consideration like the banded killerfish and little minnows, you know what I mean? Things like that, some just baby fish like baby bass and baby pickerel, in April I've caught in smallmouth that regurgitated pickerel because pickerel just finished spawning. So you have really, really small pickerel in the water, and believe it or not, and those bass and smallmouth lighten them up, because they're really easy to eat, so a lot of forage baits that you can imitate, within the New England area, just depending on what body of water you are and what time of the year you're fishing.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yep.
So let's expand on that and really get into the meat of what tonight's topic is supposed to be about. Tournament prep fishing and how different forage all over the Northeast, not just New Hampshire or Mass or Maine, like the entirety of it. Because, we got people that I know that go to like Champlain, right? And that place has everything. I mean, literally everything. And then you go to Lake maybe on the north end.
Oh, really?
So that's the rumor, because the last year, and I haven't seen enough weights yet this year, heard enough chatter, but I mean, they've been moving up the St. Lawrence River for the last how many years now?
And that goes
and it's
right
unimpeded into Champlain. It's only a matter of time before they eventually go. They just haven't stopped. They went to Lake Ontario, down the river, and they're just going to keep going. Eventually, they're going to come in on the north end. And they were saying last year that all the smallmouth weights were up like a quarter pound on average, like for the whole season. Like that's a pretty big, consistent jump. So the theory is that enough gobies have moved in and enough smallmouth have started to make them a part of their normal diet that's what's impacted it. Like everybody's seen what's happened to the lakes, Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence when the gobies went in and the smallmouth really made that transition. Their weights ballooned.
5 to 6 to 6 to 7s.
Right. So it's all theory, right? At this point, it's just everybody's kind of guessing, but there's something there. Something has changed for the better.
It's happening.
Can you imagine Champlain with like a Lake Ontario or just a Great Lakes population of gobies? That place would be insane.
Yep.
It's already got probably the greatest diversity of fishing anywhere in New England and most of the country for that matter, I would even say. And the sheer numbers of fish is insane. So all of a sudden, if you can get all those smallmouth that are really healthy and plentiful, there's something like a bunch of gobies, that'd be amazing. We need to get those things in Winnipesaukee. No, actually, I take that back.
We need to get rid of the rock bass in Winnie.
We need toothy critters.
Yeah, we need pike
walleye and pike to balance out those friggin' rock bass. Speaking of which, we fed. Go ahead.
So for tournament fishing, right? Tournament strategy. One thing I like to do is really prepare for the particular fishery that I'm going to use. So I don't prepare for every situation, right? Because the thing you have to understand with tournament fishing is, you're trying to create your situation based off of the conditions you're faced with, right? So you can't go in to prepare for every situation because you can't focus on every situation, right? It's like junk fishing to the highest level. I'm going to bring everything with me, and whatever they want to do, I'm going to do. Well, that doesn't quite work because it's hard to make adjustments if you're preparing for everything. If you're preparing for fishing deep, you can make more adjustments by preparing for fishing deep versus preparing for fishing deep, shallow bridges, lily pads, deep docks, all these type of things, So I have a box, and I try to condense everything into that one tray. It's going to be hooks. It's going to be some weights. It's going to be some of the plastics. You can always replenish, right? It's like you're stocking in your basement, versus in your boat. You shouldn't keep everything in your boat that you can put in your basement, It's just going to sit there. It's going to distract you. So to always prepare for the actual fishery itself. And it helps me to commit too, because I've done my research. So if you put these things in a box, you didn't just randomly put these lures together. You put some thought into it, and it should be based off of your strengths and your familiarity, right? And by using your strengths and by being familiar with what's going on, you can better prepare for the situation versus stockpiling everything for every situation. So that's one thing I like to do for a tournament strategy. Is
Yeah, 'cause
really
you don't wanna
condense
spend the
what
whole
I'm gonna
day.
do with a particular location.
I don't know. Can you do you have video of us on the call? I forget if it was set up so you
No,
can
I
actually.
got these two blue dots that have been
All
going
right.
around. I'm looking at myself right now. You know what I mean? I'm like in self
You-
position real quick. You know?
You can't see me grimacing like
No,
painfully
I can't see
because
anything at all, man. This is the first podcast I do where I'm just looking at myself. I really feel like I'm preparing for like a best man speech. You know what I mean? I'm looking right at myself. You know what I mean? So it's good for me to work on how I look. But
You look
I have
great.
no clue as to how you guys look and how people actually see me.
right. So I'm grimacing
Yeah,
in
candid. But
pain and discomfort because what you just said is me to a T but in the bad way. Because like so Andrew and I will talk and we try and do the exact same thing you just said, right? Like we know, okay, depending on where we're going, it's either be shallow or deep, stand water, clear water, largies or smallies, crawfish, baitfish, whatever. Like we kind of have a general game plan going in. And I will tie all my rods specific to that, but then I'll load the boat, which is exactly against what you just said. And I won't like I should simplify it, but like, man, like if I think we're gonna be deep, and we've done this recently, where like we said, okay, I think they're gonna be deeper for smallies. We just did this Sunday. We're kind of like in a in between spot where he could have fished for largies and I could just cast the other side of the boat and caught deeper smallies.
Right.
Working that transition area.
Yeah.
Yep. And like I was geared up all for smallies to start the day, but I still brought everything because I'm still too way in tune into junk fishing to an extent. Like I'm comfortable with it, but I'm probably too comfortable being willing to switch things up rapidly versus making those more subtle changes. Although I to my credit, I've definitely gotten better at that versus like making all these drastic changes.
Yeah, you have.
Did I not just prove that on Sunday? Shut your mouth. He's making faces at me, but
At all, but it can teach you discipline, right?
yeah.
I mean, if you look at there's a reason why you have X amount of hours in a tournament, right? It's 8 hours. Now you're just going to go out and catch a lot of fish over the course of 8 hours. but
Hopefully,
you
that's the
figure
plan.
out the fish and catch what you need over the course of 8 hours. So if you're trusting what you brought, right, now you have to trust your adaptation to the situation. Meaning you could take 2 or 3 hours to find the right color of the same type of bait that you brought, or the right weight to adjust the presentation that you bought, and then you start catching fish, right? Obviously the goal is to get them before 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, whenever that time frame changes, whether it's a 3-hour tournament or it's a 6-hour tournament, 8-hour tournament. But the whole purpose is you kind of gotta figure it out as you're going along. And if you're constantly changing complete techniques, you're not really. There's no way you can dial into a retrieve speed with like a rattle trap if you go from a rattle trap to a buzz bait to a spinnerbait to a crankbait. There's just no way, because all 4 of those baits require a different presentation, right? So,
Yep.
so there's no way you're gonna dial in that way. You're just gonna get randomly lucky, right? So now you're casting everything. You're gonna get a bite or two. But if you take the time to bring 3 different size spinnerbaits, a couple different blades, some skirts, you're gonna figure it out better. And when you figure it out, you're gonna get rewarded better too, because it's that precise. And that's generally what separates the difference between winning and losing. If you look at just today, Bassmaster Live is going on, and I'll just use like Brandon Polnick, for example, and Jason Christie and Seth Fighter, right? All 3 of them had the same kind of game plan, right? Let's go catch some smallmouth and hopefully go get some largemouth. Well, depending on how fast it worked out for you, you may not get to that second level of fishing, right? So Seth Fighter, got his fish pretty quickly, and he was working at the largemouth. Jason Christie, last I checked, was struggling all day to get to that level of smallmouth. Brandon Polnick knew that he was just going to go at smallmouth and work his way up. And by the end of the day, it was working out for him. I haven't seen the leaderboard, the results, but you can tell they already were committed to a
Now I
particular
gotta look.
style, you know what I mean? And they were going to give it X amount of time to start working, But as soon as you give yourself a limited amount of time or a couple other options, you stop wanting to do that. Case in point, just yesterday, not toot my own horn at all, but I was in the big bass derby.
Toot it, bud.
And
Toot it hard.
I lost a big fish. What was that?
I said, toot your horn, bud. Toot it hard.
Yeah, so I lost a big fish, and I'm like, man, 'cause it happened pretty quickly. And this is what's weird. Like, I saw a group of fish. I had a worm that worked before last July, so I already knew I had a set of criteria that possibly could work for me. And then you had intermittent thunderstorms coming in, so I knew it might be an abbreviated day, right? So I'm like, all right. So going into this, I kind of knew these things, so I took the time to rig up what I wanted, and I took the time to find some fish, and then I took time to make them bite. It's almost like seeing a wolf pack of smallmouth circling around, man. Eventually you're gonna find that right lure, and then they go bananas, and you get that big fish on. And if you lose that fish, it's even more devastating because you know you did everything right. You figured it out,
Oh yeah, it's the
and then I
worst.
lost the fish. So I had a big fish on, and I lost the fish. It's all my fault. You know, it's right from the start. I went to the wrong part of the boat. I ran to the back of the boat. A lot of guys make that mistake. They run right to the back of the boat, and then you have a motor, a power port, talon in your way. Now you gotta lift that rod up and go over that accessory right there.
Yeah.
That's a bad move because it changes the feel of the rod. The fish can sense that stuff, you know. You can sense that, make a move. So I knew I was running out of options when I went to the back of the boat. It was a bad mistake, and I'm sitting there trying to get my drag going, and it was sticky. It wasn't coming out, so I was in back reel, but I was holding onto the rail, and I pointed my rod down to give the fish some more leeway, but it was a bigger fish, and I could tell it was a bigger fish because it didn't want to show itself. And instead of coming up, it was going back down, and my line snapped at the leader, which is, all my fault, not to not issue it. It was completely all my fault. But what I'm getting at is that I figured that fish out, lost that fish, and I'm like, man, what do I do? Well, I still had 2 hours left, but that was devastating to me, So I had to think about it, and I was like, that's not even how I expected to catch my fish today. I expected either to catch one under a dock or fishing a bigger worm out a little bit deeper. So I went to the secondary pattern, which is fishing a bigger worm out a little bit deeper, and I ended up catching another big fish, and still winning the tournament. But while I was using my drop shot, I was thinking of my worm and I was thinking of my jig. So I kind of gave myself a little too much to think about, or at least to go to. So I wasn't giving that drop shot enough time, and lo and behold, it was the one that actually got the bigger fish on there. But I wasn't fully prepared, and that kind of led to me losing that fish. So what I'm saying is, when you're developing your strategy for what you're doing, don't be so quick to bail on it, but you also got to be ready to make small adjustments to it, and then just scrap it all together. But you don't want to have a wide array of tactics to do in a small amount of time. You can get more success by at least trusting what you planned on doing from the get-go. You know what I mean? Even if someone is catching fish with something else, you don't just abandon what you're going to do. So
I'm pretty good at grinding things out.
Yeah. So, dude, like Sunday. So it's exactly what you just said for Andrew and I. Sunday was a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because I came in and, like I said earlier, I was planning on grinding a smallmouth deeper, and you were like, I'm going to go for shallow or largemouth, which is perfect because that place is just small enough that we could set up right in that transition point, and either side of the boat, we were parallel that breaking point from shallower to deeper water all day. It's a small place. And if I just turned anywhere from like 11 o'clock to, back to 5 o'clock, I was in larger territory. But if I went from basically 12 o'clock anywhere back to 4 or 5 o'clock, was all smallie territory. Literally everything I had lined up was all smallmouth.
Yeah.
And I stuck to it for too long.
We literally had both live wells full of fish. One was full of smallies, one was full of largies.
Yeah, but not until later in the day.
But, yeah.
But for the first 2 hours, like I tried to this is I gotta get my thoughts straight on this. So you had just said, Sheron, that don't give up on things too early and stick to it to a certain extent. And I think that's the hardest thing in what really separates the most successful anglers from the rest of us is knowing where to toe that line and where to bend and break. Because I watched Andrew put 8 fish in the boat before I changed my tactics. I was still skunked.
Right. 8 fish is a lot. 1 or 2 bites is so big. I mean, fish number 3 or 4 is like, you probably may have to adjust a little bit. But I kind of approach it like I'm a basketball player, right? So I have a starting 5. So to this day, I pretty much start out with five rods, the 5 strategies that I'm going to deploy for the day. Now I got a rod locker full of rods, and sometimes more rods make it out, right? It's like my bench players, right? So I think the NBA roster is I think it's 12 men or whatever, but 5 ball all the time. You have the 6 man, then you have 7, 8, 9 that may come in if it's a blowout or to give some scrub minutes, right? So I treat my strategies the same way. So I knew going into yesterday, my drop shot, probably pull a guy off the bench, have him shoot a couple threes. I plan on feeding my big man, which was my jig. And if my big man was missing, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to my mid-range jumper, which was going to be my worm in the grass. And I call it burn. So back in college or in high school, coach gave you burn, he gave you minutes on the court. So either you was getting burned or you were getting no burn. So I apply the same thing to all my strategy. At 7:30, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this. And I'm going to give this style chicken lure for like 5 to 10 minutes of burn. I get a reaction, good, I might give it some more. Or I get one quick fish, cool. I only plan on using it for 10 minutes anyway. So if I got one fish, it does not mean I'm going to go to that strategy for the rest of the day. It did its job. It's better if I put it away because now it got me that one fish. Let me get back to my starters to get me some more fish per se, right? So over the course of 8 hours, I have it broken down to what time I'm going to change something, what time I'm just going to see if it's working. They're like assessments, you know what I mean? And you can't wait till 1 o'clock, which is what I used to do. I used to wait till 1 o'clock. I have no fish, and also I pick up like a tube and drag a bottom and get 1 or 2 fish by the end of the day. Well, I should have did that sooner. I should have made my assessment sooner, and I would have realized that, I needed to make a change in my strategy. And I'm getting better at it because I don't catch fish a lot in the morning. So I'm learning, you know what, just use a top water for 2 hours, Sheron. Just do that for 2 hours each tournament until you figure out how to get fish. At least it's a strategy that I can start out with, and you can give me some results. Because if you're not getting any top water fish after an hour or two, the activity level is low. You don't have to stop running all over the lake chasing that top water. The activity level is low. And then you should make your adjustment. But you don't have to wait till all day to see if that's going to work. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
So I apply it the same way. Give them minutes. Have times during the day where it's a self-check. Is this really working? Do I need to make an assessment? Is the guy kicking my butt with something that's purple and I'm not? You know what I mean? And the sooner you do that, the more likely you're going to turn your day around.
Yep.
I do that a lot though, like jig fishing. Like I'm working a Rocky Point, and I'm throwing the jig for pretty much all day. I'm like I usually am, but I'll work an area on that point with the jig, and then I'll pick up a spinnerbait and throw a spinnerbait in there, see what happens, or a crankbait, and just see what happens. If I get hit, then I'll work it for a little bit longer. If I don't get, I'll switch back to the jig, or I'll throw a drop shot in there real quick, and then I'll go to the other side of and work the other bank. And I'll just work the entire thing. I mean, I've worked a tree literally for an hour before, throwing different shit, and then finally caught a fish off of it. It's sometimes it's tough.
Right, and that's always the hardest thing to determine. I know I just said it a couple minutes ago too, but to reiterate that point, like that's the hardest thing to understand, and it's. I feel like there's no easy answer to that other than time in the water, and even then, that's not enough. KVD said it himself many times. He's like at a certain point, too much that it hurts you. You're overanalyzing everything you do. But then there are other people that are just too damn impatient and they run through it. So like, where do you draw that fine line? At different times of the years, it becomes more clear than others. Like there are certain times where you need to hit that one tree like Andrew does, like he just said, for an hour straight. And you got to pick it apart, hit it from every angle because that fish is down there. And you just got to wait for that magic moment where you just got the right pitch at the right time and the right deflection, whatever that magic combo was. The fish is like, oh yeah, game on.
Yeah.
And then there's other times where like, doesn't matter what you're going to do. You got to move because some fish are just in lockjaw and the other fish are like super aggressive. You put anything in front of them, they're going to bite. And that's a hard thing to find balance in when we're out there tournament fishing or even just fun fishing is like, we're like, how do you make that distinction? Like what?
You can expand on that even more with the way he approached that tree, right? So even though he fished that tree for an hour, he took an X amount of casts, right? So you can take the X amount of casts over the course of an hour. You can take the X amount of casts over the course of 2 hours or the course of 8 hours, right? You're constantly visiting that tree. The goal is to get a fish from that tree. So you may not get a fish from that tree in that first hour, but if you still apply those same amount of casts with the same presentation X amount of times, you still give yourself a chance to catch fish from that tree.
Right.
The sooner you hit it, sooner you can leave, right? Sooner you hit it, sooner you can leave. And that's something I've learned over the last year is, and everyone talks about it, is decisions you make, right? But I'm learning to make more decisions, because the more you make, the better your chances of getting them right. You don't got to stick with the decision, right? You just make the decision quick. Throw a top watt over here real quick, throw a spinnerbait over here real quick, That's 2 decisions you can make in like 2 minutes, which means you got, I don't know how many minutes in 8 hours, you know what I mean? But you have that many more minutes to make those many decisions. And all you're trying to do initially is to get 5 right, So you make 1,000 decisions on the water, which could be 1,000 casts. 5 of those casts could be the right casts to get the fish in the boat, right? So
yeah.
So you gotta look at it like that too, you know what I mean?
Nope, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
In the chat, Grat 84 asked, Sean, do you soak an area or are you more of a pattern guy? And then after you answer that, I want to throw my answer in that too, and Andrew. I want all three of us to give our input on that.
Well, so strategy wise, right? I'm more of a pattern guy, which is in Massachusetts, it works in the central Mass area, where I live at. But when I go down to the Cape, there's nobody running any patterns down there because it's spot fishing. I dare somebody to tell me it's not spot fishing in the Cape, and I'll prove you wrong every time. So pattern fishing does not really work in the Cape because you don't have multiple different types of structure and cover, all around and depth changes. So it's not going to work. You're in an area that's like a highway or just attracts fish at a certain time of year, so your odds are better. But in the central part of the state, in the western part of the state, and up in northeast like New Hampshire and stuff in Maine, you run patterns all day long because you have trees, you have docks, you have coontail, you have a couple boat ramps, you have some points, you have coves. Those are all different strategies, different patterns that you can run, So I learned my patience by fishing the Cape. I got my butt kicked enough times and left enough times early where I learned, like, you know what, let's just grind it out right here. You get a couple bites, and it proved successful a couple times, you know what I mean? But then when I come down here, like on Lake Shirley or Webster Lake or Quincy or the National River, I have a few different tactics that I can deploy. So now I can run different patterns. And that helps me both ways, when I go out of state to a larger body of water, because with a larger body of water, you can try a lot of different patterns, but eventually you're going to get rewarded, more so than you're in a smaller body of water where you may only have a little pad field, so that pad's really quick, right? And then you got to switch it up and go fish a point. But you can still apply the same strategy to a larger body of water that has more opportunities, more pad fields, more points and stuff like that. So kind of both, you know what I mean? But now, which is what I'm getting at, I got some different electronics on my boat. I can see better, and I can see really good. Like it's amazing what I can see now with the electronics I have on my boat, and that alone makes me stay longer because obviously your eyes are the ultimate truth. During the spawn, you see beds, you don't leave. You figure out trying out how to get, especially if there's a lot of beds. You try to figure out how to get those fish. 1 or 2 beds, you're gonna leave, right? But if you don't see the beds, you don't see anything that's gonna keep you there. You keep going. So I'm fishing areas now, and Lake Shirley is my test lab because it's close. I can get there, pretty quickly. I have a few different lakes for like simulation, depending on what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go. I don't care what the weather is. I'm just going to go there for simulation. I know it's going to pay off at a real larger body of water. So I don't care what my results are at the smaller body of water, but I can still work on that. So I go out there and I'm fishing areas that I've always fished before and leave. But now I'm seeing like, oh, there actually are fish here because I'm seeing them, and that makes me stick around longer, and it's starting to pay off. You know what I mean? So there's a fine line there, but you need some kind of indicator to tell you to stay or go, whether it's a bite, whether it's someone else catching a fish, whether it's just a high level of confidence, or now, depending on what type of electronics you have on your boat, you can see more. Now you can actually see fish, moving as well as just the rock that you think holds a fish, right? You know what I mean? Or the depth that you think holds a fish. So you got to use something else, is what I'm saying, to help you determine whether to stay or go. Just your own thought process, you can expand on that. Fish minders don't lie, right? You know what I mean? Or people catching fish around you don't lie, So you may be struggling with that decision, but someone else can make it for you because this fish still being caught, So try to use something else aside from your own decision making, whether you need to stay or go, if it's possible for you.
I got you. I wholeheartedly agree with all that. So,
Oh yeah.
For you, Andrew.
For me, usually pattern.
Yep.
I mean, I'll go when I first show up to a place, or even if I've never been to a place before, I will go on Google Maps. I will go on Navionics. I will look for points. I will try and find areas where there's a lot of docks, where there's pads, any sort of structure, and I'll just go straight to working that. And if they're not there, then I'll move out deeper, try and find some rocks out deeper, some sort of structure out deeper, and then start working those. And it's pretty much, that's usually how I always start fishing and how I do it.
Yep.
That's just, when I go out.
Let me ask you a question. What's your strategy to a completely new body of water, new larger body of water?
Oh, we
Are you just
covered
going to
this.
search for those things that you just mentioned?
How to find them?
For me, because I trust my instincts a lot,
So
if
do
I
I.
don't know where I'm going, my instincts can't help me.
Right. Same
They
way.
can get you in trouble. So for me, I've learned now to my first strategy is just learning my way around. I don't even care what I see. I just want to be able to learn my way around. So if my brain says, "Yo, go try this, go try that,"
How am I
I
getting back?
kind of know where it exists. You know what I mean?
I mean, I spend a lot of time if I'm going to a new place, or if he mentions we're going to a new place, I usually spend a pretty decent amount of time on Google Maps and Google Earth or whatever, just physically looking at the shoreline, if what I can see, like if it's clear water, what you can see in the clear water just offshore, if there's like a rock pile or rocky point or something, or if there's trees off the shore, and then if I can't see that stuff, then I'll go to Navionics and look for any sort of like humps out in the middle, or thinking that there may be rocks on it. Maybe some will be out there, be like, hey, I saw this on here. Well, let's go check that out.
Right.
Or if I have my boat, which I just have, I don't even have, what the hell do I have? Nothing. I don't even use anything. I just go out and start casting that shit. And it works. So,
Yeah. Well, to expand on what you just said, like I'm the same way. We're both pretty similar. That's why we fish together so much anyway. But we have just enough difference in what we do.
we're the same, but we're completely different.
Yeah, to an extent. But that's what makes us such a good team, because we're so comfortable doing so many different things that we can fish polar opposites. But the moment that one of us gets locked into a good pattern, we can both switch to that and hammer it together. So it works because we maximize our problem solving early on, and then we can capitalize on it once we found like the best pattern.
We've gotten very well at figuring them out pretty early.
Yeah, because
and then being able to get the sizes up throughout the day.
Yeah, 'cause for the most part, and I'm with both of you, I'm a pattern fisherman. There are times of the year where you really want to soak an area. I've said this in almost every single stream so far, where really focusing on your areas with your highest probability of success, given that time of the year, like early in the year, right? Steep banks. If you can find a really nice point, especially the wind's driving into it and you're marking a ton of bait, like that is your highest probability of success. Even if it's going to be a slow day, nonetheless, that's where you're most likely to find success. So like,
Exactly.
that's where I start, no matter what I'm doing at every time of the year. I want to focus on those things. And I've got, anywhere from 3 to 10 different techniques that I am absolutely confident that one of them is going to get bit. And I'll work my way through it kind of rapidly. And we'll go through 1, 2, 3 areas of my highest probabilities of success until we kind of figure out that pattern. But there are still, those random days we get every once in a while where you just got to soak an area. Like, for whatever reason, the weather's just got them in a funk and they're shut down. But, like, you pick your top 5 favorite lakes. Anybody, pick your top 5 favorite lakes. And there's got to be at least one spot, minimum one spot on all 5 of those lakes that you can go catch fish on almost any time of the year.
Yeah.
And even on the worst friggin' day of the year where they've got lockjaw, if you go there and you soak that area, you're going to at least avoid the skunk. And that's one of the things that I think we've really excelled at over the last few years to avoid getting skunked. Like, okay, we cannot pattern them because it's just not happening today. So be it. We're going to that spot because we know they're always there at some point. I'll throw everything in my boat for the next 6 hours. I'm not going home with 0 fish today and make it work.
You make the decision. Yep.
We've done it. We've done it plenty of times.
You
and
eliminate,
it's paid off.
that as that other locations as other options. So allow you to dial in to where you think you have your greatest probability. So it increases your focus too, because you're not thinking of where they're at. Now it's like how. It's more how, because you've committed to an area, you know what I mean, versus the where. You eliminate the where,
Yep. So Talon just said, well, actually, first I'll back it up. Grat just said, new body, I fish my strengths first, which, yeah, absolutely. And we did a stream, a couple months ago now, where we covered like how we go about breaking down new water, right? And a lot of that is like just computer work, dude. You're sitting down, you're looking at every possible resource you can get your hands on. Depth charts, information from your, like in this case in New Hampshire, specifically for us, New Hampshire Fish and Game actually has decent depth maps for the majority of the lakes in the state. And it lists almost at least the primary forage in there. You know, not just the bass, smallmouth, largemouth, and trout, but also like yellow perch or crappie or white perch or bluegill, like the whole 9 yards. You can always count on like crayfish being pretty much everywhere and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
pretty
So
much.
like, if you know, like, okay, I know what my strengths are, and I'm going to this new body of water, and I've looked at a depth chart, and I've looked at satellite images, I'm like, okay, well, it seems to be dirty, pretty shallow, couple of good points, looks like a lot of rocks. Okay, I know I love fishing a jig, so I can make that work, and I'm just going to adjust for there, and it helps simplify that initial process. Like, that helps break down a very foreboding prospect, like, oh my god, new water, what do I do? Well, okay, well, if you take your strengths and a little bit of time and effort, like, okay, well, there's only bluegill and yellow perch here, so there's probably crayfish, tons of them pretty much anywhere you go, so that's got to be main forage too. Like, I can probably work a jig, and I'm comfortable with that and make it work.
Yeah, pretty much fish what you're comfortable with at
Yeah.
first, and then expand from there.
And that goes into Talon's comment where he said, I really need to work on learning all the nearby water. That's one reason why I started doing tournaments. So I kind of goes hand in hand with
You
Grad.
have to give up catching fish to learn to fish. Like, it's biggest thing. It's easy for me. It got a lot easier, again, because I fished a lot growing up. I fished a lot of ponds. I was in a lot of crawdads. I fished from the shore, and I caught a lot of fish. But then that didn't excite me anymore because I wanted to go prove it against someone else. I wanted to prove it that I can do it anywhere, anytime, and that's what drives me. You know,
It's kind of where I'm getting at now.
A competitive fisherman. But when I go to areas that I already know, I don't do what I know. Like, I never do. Like, I've always, I'll catch a fish with something, and then I don't even use it again. Like, I've always been like that all my life. You know, I don't know what it is. I'll go to it, you know, when the money's on the line. But when I go practice, I call it simulation. You know what I mean? Like, I go fish the river. I'm preparing for fishing some lush water pads and stuff like that. I go fish like at Webster. I'm preparing to use my electronics more to locate structure and fish offshore. You know what I mean? So everywhere I'm going, you know, I go fish around Shirley. I go learn to fish around a lot of people, a lot of crowds and stuff like that. Or I go fish in areas where there's not much cover anymore because they keep shocking the weeds. So I got to learn how to read bottom composition when I go fish Lake Shirley now, because I just can't go find the grass anymore because it doesn't exist. But I can find what is mud to rock, right? Or I can find what is rock sitting on sand. You know what I mean? I can find that stuff now because I've been practicing at it, and I practice for an hour or two. I call them shots, like a 2-hour shot, and I'm gonna do a specific thing at a specific location in a specific way, and I'm fine with the results because I know I'm gonna go back again. So I can get 8 hours of fishing in over the course of 8-hour days versus 8 hours straight. And you actually learn more because we're in New England, right? So over the course of 8 days, you're going to get maybe 5 or 6 different weather patterns.
It's going to be 90, then snow. You're going to be ice fishing 2 of the days.
You get a different test
Right.
each time you go out there, you know. So, and by doing that, I become better because, again, I keep it really structured in a small amount of time. And then I just make some notes, build off of that, and you go back out there again. You know what I mean? But you got to sacrifice catching fish to be able to learn how to catch fish in other ways, because you're not always going to catch them when you're first learning, you know. But if you stick with it, you figure it out. Now you got another, you know, arsenal, you know, in your weaponry. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good approach.
Fish don't always hang out on the same structure. Say there's 2 identical points. They may not be on one of them, but they may be stacked up on the other one. Like when we went up to St. Lawrence, we were asking you, where are some good shoals to fish? And you'd be like, nah, that one sucks. Like, don't go over there. Go to this one over here. And we started catching fish.
Right. But
Like,
on the surface, they look like the same goddamn
they
thing.
look exactly the same. Yeah.
They really do.
So it's like, what the hell
And there's
separates
a
that one
million
from
of
the other
them.
one?
Up there, there's a million of them. But like try this place. Okay, we started catching fish. Okay, we didn't catch them off this one. Sheron, we're texting you on the water. Where the hell do we go next?
Yeah.
Try this one. Okay, start catching fish
Yeah,
again.
let's try, right? You know what I mean? Just stuff to try, because sometimes that's all you need. Hey, let's go in that direction. Okay, cool. And then you go in that direction, like, it is where a pattern fish can help you out, right? So I always love docks, but what I learned was by following a dock, I find a grass bed. By going to this dock over here, I find a tree. By going to this dock over here, I realize it goes from 10 feet, 3 feet. You know what I mean? So chasing one thing, as long as you have an open mind, you can find something else. And on the St. Lawrence River, I used to fish right in Clayton, you know, and like I didn't go too far. I probably went a mile straight out. Then went to Canada, probably went maybe a mile down and a mile up. And that's all different stuff. But if you go 10 miles up that river, it's entirely different. You go
Yeah,
20 miles up
yeah.
the river, it changes again. Now you're in the Alexandria area. You go further up, now you're in Chippewa Bay, and that's different. When you go further up, like up towards the Ogdensburg area, the river's entirely different
We
up there
fished
too.
all
So
of
just
that.
by driving 10 to 15 minutes in some direction, you change your whole terrain, which can change your whole outcome, in fishing. You know what I mean?
right.
I
Dude,
think we fished literally every foot of that river from where you just said, from the lake up to, what is it, Chesapeake, what the hell is
Chippewa
that?
Bay.
Chippewa
Dude,
Bay.
so this most recent trip, we seriously, God, it was brutal. That was like, I thought last year, that 2019, when we were there, the water was 1 foot lower than the highest it had ever been in recorded history. Like, that's insane for the freaking Lake Ontario in the St. Lawrence River. Like, that is not small water. It's about as big as it gets outside of the freaking ocean. It's called the Great Lakes for a reason, people.
Yeah, man. It's no joke.
So, like, okay, things were different. Even people up there had no idea what they were doing to an extent because you were in an absolutely unprecedented conditions.
Yep.
I'll give it that. We'd never been there. Totally different forage base. Fishing current we've never experienced, even when it's at normal level,
I thought
whatever.
we did pretty good.
All things considered, for 2019, we did pretty damn good. I'll pat ourselves in the back.
Clear water, which is intimidating to anybody
yeah.
initially.
Dude, when you look-
see everything.
When you look down in 30 feet of water, and it looks like you're sitting in 3. That's a different
Yep.
kind of gin
You
clear.
have no idea what's going
It is,
on.
man.
Right, and then
Really different.
last year there was like totally different animal, and like you said, where you go from Clayton to say Alexandria, like around the Thousand Islands crossing there, the American Narrows, and then up to Chippewa Bay. It's like all totally different. And we had one day where we got our teeth kicked in, and we launched in Alexandria at Key Waden State Park in the American Narrows, which was only like 2 miles, I think, from the Thousand Island crossing.
Yeah. Oh.
And we ran almost all the way back down to Clayton and all the way up to Chippewa Bay. And I think we had maybe a half dozen fish to show for our efforts
Yeah,
for the
then
whole day.
we got-
Dude, we covered miles.
Dude, we got fucked
over
up
like
that day,
we
too.
did over like 12 hours.
Wind started picking up. We're like,
Yeah, they're all entirely different from each other.
Yeah, but you can't say we didn't give it an honest effort, given that like
Yeah.
we tried
Yep.
everything. it didn't
Literally
pan
everything.
out for that day. So yeah, like
it's a day-to-day basis. It goes day to day.
yes, it does. So one of the backing up to the chat a little bit here, Grat asked a question which is really good, and Talon expanded upon it. And actually, Andrew, I want to hear from you first, and then Sheron, I want your answer. So Grat asked, 1 hour left in the day, you need fish number 5, what's your go-to technique? But then Talon clarified accurately, I agree with. That really needs more like what lake and so much beyond that, because it's pretty subjective, which he's right, because you have 1 hour left in the day, you need number 5, what's your go-to technique? Well, what time of the year is it? Because that varies greatly. Well, let's go with current conditions. Right now, we're early mid-July, and water temp is low to upper 70s, depending on where you're at. I'll go with you, Andrew, first. I'll throw the same hypothetical at everybody. So we're gonna do Glacial Lake in Lakes Region, New Hampshire, because that's pretty applicable to where most tournaments are going on right now. What are you gonna do?
Jesus, I just go to a bank and start throwing anything bottom contact.
What's your go-to though? Like, what's the very first thing? Like, okay,
Probably
we're down to an
jig.
hour.
Probably some sort of jig.
We've tried everything. What's your first thing? A jig?
Probably the hustler.
Hustler. What color?
Brown and black.
So for those that aren't aware what the Hustler is, that's a Beast Coast Fishing. It's a hybrid finesse jig. It's both a silicone skirt or rubber skirt and then also marabou hair. And the thing's freaking killer. So what'd you say, brown and black?
Brown
So
and
that's
black.
Dirty
probably.
Dog.
Yeah, the dirty
With
dog.
what are you throwing for a trailer?
Either green pumpkin, probably maybe 3-inch swim bait, or black swim bait trailer.
Ooh, like where your thoughts at? Are you going for largies or smallies?
You know, for smallies at that point.
That last hour in the day?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Sean, what are you doing? Lakes region, last hour. You need number 5.
Number one, if there's some grass I can flip, I'm going to the grass. I learned that about myself. No matter where I've been at in the country so far, if there's something to flip, I found that I'm there. And I used to try to get in position to go flip. Now I'm going to do it. If it's a high recreational place where there's like no grass, then I'm going to go skip docks with a jig. If there's no docks around like that and it's just open, then I'm gonna go to a Texas rig worm. And those three right there are kind of what I'm gonna do. They're
That's
all slow
pretty much-
presentations,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And they all can
I thought we were doing one.
definitely yield the bite, you know what I mean? Because they're all similar.
Yep.
You know, and they're pretty versatile and they have a high rate of success with getting a bite, you know.
Yep. Listen, I have no shame.
See, if I would have known that we were doing 3 baits, I would have done the exact same 3.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, but there's, I mean,
I see
he
what we're doing
handled
here.
it. He gave his go-to, and then he gave his backups behind that.
I see what we're doing here.
If I was to pick one bait right now, it's going to be a Texas rig plastic because I can pitch under dock.
Yeah, you can
I
do
throw
literally
it
everything
back,
with it.
and I can just cast it out in the open and retrieve it back slow. You
Yep.
know? So,
Yep.
And that's another thing I learned about myself just over the years. Like, okay, where I've actually had the highest rate of success, and I'm like, wow, it's been some Texas rig plastic. Even when I'm committing to a jig or a buzzbait, I still find myself picking up some kind of Texas rig plastic and pitching it or casting it around.
Yeah, that's
to the
sometimes
point where
what happens. You just
that's
get
what
bit
I-
on that.
taking with me to the opens level, and if I qualify for elites, I'm bringing that too. So if you happen to see me do well at some point in time, you know, like really something that's catered for me, chances are I'm gonna be flipping and pitching something some kind of way. You know what I mean? And now I'm learning to drive that distance to go find that kind of stuff now. You know,
Yep.
hopefully it pays off.
For me, I have zero pride, and I will go to
I know
a
exactly what
wacky
you're
rig Senko, bud. I'll do it. If I need to put one more fish in the boat, I'm tying that
I've
thing
seen
on.
you do it, and you did it the other day.
And it worked.
It did. It did work.
Zero shame.
Yeah,
But
man,
it just
you can't
works.
understand with that anymore. You know, I initially did probably 8 years ago. You know, and then I watched people revitalize their career with that. You know, because when it comes down to it, you know, we call it the crinkle. We call the Senko the crinkle. 'Cause
It works, though.
crinkle was money. You know, and that thing will produce money for you. Now to the point now where you don't have to go use a Senko, you use a Senko type bait, so you feel a little bit of credibility. Like, yeah, dead ringer or something. You know what I mean? I use a poor boy shimmy stick.
It's
You
a
know what I mean?
damn
It's still the
Senko.
same concept, but it still produces because it's so natural. And you use it so many different ways. You know what I mean? But when you know everyone else is doing it, you still can get away with some other kind of plastic, like Texas rig lizard always caught fish at the beginning of time, right? You know what I mean? A sluggo still caught fish at the beginning of time. Flipping a grub still caught fish in the beginning of time. Flipping a tube still works. You know what I mean? So you kind of just playing those odds, playing those numbers, and what's easily available to you. You know, so there's no shame in your game with that particular style at all. It's still a Texas rig plastic, still a plastic you're fishing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
definitely can relate.
Yep. What do we got for questions? Buddy, David, you missed everything. Just kidding. You can watch it all later. David Roy here. John Mango. If my life's on the line, I'm grabbing that max scent general every time. Lol. that max
It's new
scent.
though. It's new. Yep.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's
General.
new.
What does that mean?
What?
I haven't seen
It's
that.
become a big player though, man. I didn't like those when they came out. The Max in general, it just seemed so weird to me the way it worked. You know, the way it looked in the water. You know, I try to force it on myself, but I find that they tend to still be in the package. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that people are doing well with some people, but
Looks
I think
stiff.
it still comes down to whatever you feel you can get bit with. You know what I mean? And that's a lot more important. Growing up, when I was fishing, my buddy had all the good stuff, man. And the dude gave me all the garbage shit, man. I'm just gonna straight up. He'd give me a hula popper with no skirt. You know what I mean? He gave me a jitterbug with one hook missing. And I was elated to use the lure. And I always caught a bigger fish than him with the crappiest lure he would give to me because I was just excited, So manufacturing your own confidence is more important than the lure you put on the end because they all do catch fish, whether you got to
What
fish
was I-
slower or change the color. When you feel good about something, I don't know, man, you can make things really, really happen. I've been with a buddy during not ice fishing time, but cold water, and he was trying to get his kinks out of his line. So he casted this gold ball head jig. It was just a gold ball head jig. Dude thought he got caught on a concrete block. Ended up catching a 7-pounder, and I'm sitting there like,
What the hell?
how did he catch that fish? And the only thing he had reason was that little lure with that flash, because it was painted gold, gave off no negative cues, but just a little bit of flash. And that fish, because it's cold, ain't trying to analyze what it's in front of his face because it have a lot of bait options. Bit that lure. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But that proves right there. You can take I think it's a wrench, right? I think it's a wrench. You put a hook on a wrench. It's like a spoon in the water.
Yeah.
I saw that happen before too. Someone just used a wrench and caught fish, right? So
I saw somebody catch a fish on a water bottle.
If you think about it, like you don't know what the fish sees in the water, right? He's not thinking like, okay, that doesn't belong in the water. They really don't. So it's us that says, oh, I never catch anything with an orange worm, and someone pulls out a silver worm and lights you up, right? Because that dude's got confidence, right? So the more confidence you have in anything, it ends up paying off because eventually you figure out how to use that lure to help you out the most. You know what I mean? So confidence to me goes a lot bigger than one particular bait that tends to have a higher rate of success. You know what I mean? It still equates to your confidence to throw it, because you can't go catch another man's fish and do another man's tactic even though you tried. They're still doing something that you don't do, and the biggest thing is they just know it's going to work. You know what I mean? That's pretty. So they stick with it. You know what I mean? Where someone that doesn't know it's going to work is not sure. In the back of your mind, you want to try something else, even though you know this is supposed to work. You don't have enough confidence with it until it produces in the most crucial situation.
Right.
Then you're a believer.
Yep. I gotta say that's probably my biggest weakness the last 2 years is a lack of confidence in everything I'm doing. Whereas you're the polar opposite. You're like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna work this jig.
Yeah.
and he just makes it work.
Too, yeah.
But because I've been so hella stressed with work for, a bunch of different reasons. And with my current work situation, almost all of the stress I manifest myself because I guess I'm a type A personality, whatever the hell that means. Like I put way too much on my own shoulders. I'm constantly chasing perfection for things that like are completely out of my control. It's stupid, but I'm getting better at like recognizing that. But I'm still really terrible at separating my work life stress from my fishing stress. But if I can't, like, at least have, like, I don't know, man, like maybe I'm different or the same as everybody else, but if I can't have like a random 5 or 10 minutes during the day, right, where I can just completely shut down for a few minutes and just look at my phone and look at something fishing related, just to like reboot my mind because I've got too much going on, and then come back into work and be like, okay, right, yeah, I know exactly what I was doing because I took notes or whatever, and I got to work on that, but I was able to clear my head. And I used to do that all the time, and that allowed me to be really good at my job while still also keeping me in tune while I'm doing fishing. Well, I've been so freaking busy and stressed with work that like I haven't been able to do any of those like little 5-minute breaks here and there to keep myself in tune. So like when I'm out there, I'm like, I feel like I'm going in blind again, man, every time. So like I don't have that confidence in anything because I really haven't had any time to, during the week, like kind of give that little thought here and there. Like, okay, I know what's coming up this weekend. And based on what I saw last weekend, I should be able to make any one of these 5 baits just friggin' work if I just maybe make a change here or there with it. But otherwise, like, that should be it. Like, my mind's not there anymore the last 2 years. And that's probably the biggest reason why I've been struggling so hard. I'm still putting fish in the boat. But
back to the essence, man. You got to just reset yourself, you know what I mean? And it's cliche, but you have to, like, make time. Like me, man, I look at my boy every day. I wake up, like, I love my family, I love my wife, I love my kids. We got a little dog, and I like the dog, but I wake up every day, I look out the window, and I look at my boat. And even when I can't go on my boat, I like giggle to myself. I'm like, oh yeah, at some point in time, all the nonsense I'm dealing with, I'm gonna check out of it, I'm gonna hop in that rig right there, and it's all gone, you know what I mean? And then I come back refreshed, it could just be a spin, it could be a troubleshooting. But the fact you're towing your boat, going to that shore,
feels good.
Your mind checks out. It's brief, but it's a complete reset. Because anytime you go back to something, it's a fresh start. It's a new start. You know what I mean? You're not picking up where you left off per se. You're starting different. You know what I mean? So you got to make that time to try to reset yourself with something that you love to do. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's nothing bad. It's nothing bad. Even when you have a bad day fishing, it's still better than a good day at work, right? And it's really true, right? You know what I mean? It's really true. Just the act of going to do it can be enough to make you feel like you actually did it, So
yeah, sometimes I hook the boat up and I'm like, I don't even want to do this right now, and I'm on my way to the lake, and I look in the rear view and I see the boat. I'm like, all right, here we go. We're doing it.
I don't want to be out there, man. Sometimes, man. I go out there, dude. It's cold.
It sucks.
It's not fun. It's dismal, man. But like, I just think like I don't play basketball anymore. Going to work on my crossover ain't really gonna help me much. Keep my son in check for a little while, and eventually he's gonna start dunking on me.
Break my ankles.
You know what I mean? So, but there's times where like I don't want to do it, but I start feeling guilty. Like I know we live up here in New England, man. So another 17, 18 weeks, man, things could change drastically. Now it's hard to get out there. So I'm like, I just gotta go. And now I've learned I'll drive an hour to fish an hour, you know what I mean, and drive an hour back because you have your thoughts. So even when you start to go fishing, you start thinking fishing, and then even thinking fishing. That's the best thing aside from time on the water is actually thinking things through before you go to do them.
90% of the time you're on the water,
you're
not even thinking fishing.
Obviously, it doesn't really come out that way, but you still can replay what your approach is going to be for the whole day. You just don't know what the results are going to be. But you can do that, mentally just by driving somewhere, with your boat in tow. You know what I mean? You play these things in your head, and we go out and try to create them, right? They're going to hit the spinnerbait today, so we go out and try to make them hit the spinnerbait today. But the excitement starts
every day this week,
this year. Yeah, right?
Dude, it's been perfect.
Let's see. We got actually no, I got one at Winnisquam last week.
Got a bunch already.
Fish.
Yeah, dude,
I usually never get spinnerbait fish, and I've gotten a bunch already this year.
Earlier this week, yeah.
Nice.
Conditions though. It's overcast. It's sweet, man. Love Clearwater overcast. Like the best.
We had a couple of days like that. Although to be fair, because my confidence is completely shot, like where I was earlier this week. At one point, I thought to myself, like, you know what? It really is prime conditions for throwing a spinnerbait, and I talked myself out of it because going back to the point about confidence, I have zero confidence in the spinnerbait, which bothers me because that was always for years up until this spring. That was my number 2 go-to bait. Number 1's jig, number 2 is spinnerbait, and I cannot catch a spinnerbait fish for the life of me this year. Chatterbait though has been good.
We've had a conversation this past weekend.
You've had a lot of success with chatterbait. Sometimes you just gotta roll what's going on. I'll say this. I'm still catching spinnerbait fish. I had a tournament win, with a spinnerbait, but my chatterbait fish are still bigger. My landing percentage is still kind of low, but those fish tend to be bigger. Overall, it takes longer to get them to bite it. I've learned that too. But they're bigger. And what I also learned is they don't bite both. Like I haven't seen like
they don't.
Spinnerbait in the chatterbait.
Not at all.
I haven't seen that because I think with a spinnerbait you're not concerned so much as cover. I think that the fish actually see it, versus the vibration with a chatterbait. You kind of feel it. You feel it a lot more. So you're going off of feel versus this kind of sight. If that makes any sense. But
yeah, it's like working a moving jig.
I was fishing the Potomac River when the chatterbaits first came out, dude, and I would try each time I went down there to compete. I didn't start getting chatterbait fish till about, I think, probably three or 4 years ago. But since then, I've caught some big fish and got a couple wins. But it took a long time. But now that I'm better at it, I've had better success out of state, like down in on Chesapeake Bay. I caught chatterbait fish, and I was around a lot of other people. And that's where having confidence in what you're doing and making a small adjustment makes a big difference. Because around a lot of people, and we all were catching big catfish. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Once you get out of like New England,
you catch weird fish.
They bite jigs, they bite flipping baits. They bite everything except topwater. I've never caught a topwater, a catfish on a topwater bait. But every other bait that I use around here, I've caught some big ass catfish in Maryland, Alabama, Tennessee, everywhere. They bite. But my point is that it was a community area, and I'm like, it's grass here. So the ideal bait is really a chatterbait. I gotta figure this out because it's, when in Rome, do what the Romans do, right? You know what I mean? So I figured that out. But the ratio was like 7-1, 7 catfish and then a bass. Well, a lot of other guys were getting that 5th and 6th catfish, and they were leaving, But I stuck it out and ended up catching like 15, 8 pounds, and finished like 4th in the BFL event there.
Jeez.
On I think it was 5th, 6th, just outside of the really, really big money. But it was with a chatterbait, and that's when I knew I'm like, okay, I finally mastered it because I cashed a check. That's how I look at if I master something. First I catch 5 fish, and then I go get paid with it, like literally. And the more I think I'm good at, I go test myself with that. I'm gonna go compete. I'm gonna use this lure right here and see how good I really am with this particular lure, which like I said before, I kind of get bored with using something because I feel like I mastered it. Now I'm on to the next. So I constantly trying to change, my learning curve. You get to a high, try something else where you stop low again. Get back to the high, start something else, get low again. And next you know, you have a plethora of lures that you have confidence in, so it doesn't matter. And I'll say one more thing, give the mic to someone else. When I went to the James River, I plan on going to get my frog and flip on. Like, it's the river, it's gonna have cover. I was gonna use a heavy jig and a tube on the main river for like hard river structure, like pilings and stuff like that. And I was gonna use a frog in a text rig plastic, in the pads and at the Chickahominy River. I had 2 patterns going. Then I had a third pattern. The third pattern was a crankbait, because the weather, kind of weird. The weather hasn't been right at these warmer environments, you know what I mean? So I'm down there with base layers like I'm at home, so I'm like, it's cold, water's muddy, water's fast. How can I make this a good practice day when it's just not ideal for flipping or whatever? So I picked up a crankbait, and I caught a big ass fish. I caught a nice 4-pound largemouth. And then I caught a catfish, Then I caught another largemouth. I'm like, oh, okay, I got a secondary pattern here. But I wanted to frog, and I wanted to flip, So I went down to Chickahominy River, caught some fish doing that, but ended up catching 20-some odd pounds, just finished just out of money with a crankbait. I caught, out of my 10 keepers, 9 of them came off of a crankbait, and only 1 came flipping. It was some kind of Senko imitation I flipped, and I caught a 4-pound largemouth because I saw a fry. I'm like, you know what? I ain't gonna throw a crankbait over there. I'm gonna throw some kind of weightless plastic. You know what I mean? But in this case, in a river, you kind of want weight on there because you can lose touch. You know what I mean? The fish are used to currents. You want the bait to be able to go straight down. You don't want it to glide unless it's like a reaction bait that you're using it with the current. But plastic, you kind of want to get right down into the current break, and that's where they can bite it. But I went there with doing one thing, and ended up catching fish from another thing. And the reason why I caught fish with it is because I'm like, hey, you know what? This works. So my confidence is at. And that was it. My confidence now, whatever works. It's not so much what I want to do, which is nice, but that's usually your downfall. It's more our downfall than it's our success point. You know what I mean? When you have a hard notion to do a particular thing, So it worked out in that case.
Right.
Oh,
nice, man. Oh, hang on. Turning attention to chat. Grat, 84 with a $25 donation. Dude, thank you so much.
It's awesome.
Sweet, thank you.
What's up?
Fucking damn.
That's what's up.
So
Shout out.
let me return the attention to like just the donations and stuff in general from the stream. For anybody that has donated so far, like seriously, thank you. I know we say it almost every stream anyway, but one of the things I talked about recently, like the first 2 months, we were like, okay, we're getting a new camera for it, but we had to make an adjustment for what the goals were for the channel because I just straight up ran out of time. I cannot keep up with like the normal videos for the channel like I used to, and I'm trying to make adjustments for that. So with Andrew really coming on board for the channel, we decided, well, the better use of that money would be to buy him a PC because he doesn't have one, so that he can start editing videos. And I am one of the best things I'm good at, and I can absolutely, I can say this confidence, I am a bargain shopper, dude. I know how to stretch my penny. I am a champ when it comes to buying things on sales.
Same here, man.
So I bought, so we had like $650 in donations, right? Up until like last week, or since the last stream. And then Amazon Prime Day came around. And then, so we got a good mid-sized tower PC case donated along with a motherboard from Mark, one of our subscribers, which was huge. Like that's good money in and of itself right there. And then
yeah, it is.
With the other $650, dude, I literally bought everything else that we needed to build actually a pretty goddamn good PC for Andrew. For exactly, it was like $630. I got a wicked good CPU, I got an M.2 hard drive, and then a regular SSD. So like an M.2 is a little bit faster.
Oh, all right.
And then a regular SSD hard drive for like just extra storage, and that's still really fast. A really good power supply that's semi-modular, so like the amount of cables in it you can kind of reconfigure. I got good RAM.
I don't even know what I'm getting, man. It's really good.
I got 16 gigabyte of 3200 megahertz RAM, so like that's pretty damn good. Not crazy good, but like, dude, like literally, I built this thing perfect for a better than moderate level editing PC.
Goodness,
for like $650 between donations from the stream and then actual parts that I picked up last week. And then I ended up finding one of the hardest things to get right now is video cards, because the whole market with just is insane right now. But I got a used GTX 970 for $100 from one of my old gaming buddies. And like, that's a good video card. It's not crazy great, but it's still really good despite how old it is. Like, I cannot thank everybody enough for what you guys have done for the stream. And like now the next thing is that
You're the winners.
really nice like high def camera, but like because donations like that, what Grat just gave us, we were able to do that. Now Andrew can help with getting videos done. I can go help like doing other things. Like it's mind-boggling how much support we've had from doing these silly streams. But
that's how it works, dude. Teamwork makes the dream work, man. No doubt about it, man.
Yep. I'm hugely appreciative of everything you guys have done. So thank you very much. And again, Grat, thank you very much. So going back to the stream, one question I saw, and I hope you're still here, Derek, I apologize. Derek Mitchell had asked, what baits do you throw consistently but do not feel confident with? And I'm going to start first because I handed it off to you guys first on the last one. Any bass addict, David, said the same thing, and I wholeheartedly agree. Big swim baits. I have a few of them that, like, dude, that bite is so addictive because when it's on, it's one of the greatest things in the world. When you're throwing a big 7-inch or bigger swim bait, you know, big hard body, 3/8 ounce, friggin' big wobbly donger, and when that thing gets trucked, it's a different kind of feeling.
Yeah,
you're throwing an 8-foot heavy or extra heavy rod rated, you know, up to 4 ounces with 20-pound or heavier line.
12 ounces.
Yeah, and when that big bait stops, you just know like it's not going to be a dink. It's so exceedingly rare that's dink. It's not always a giant.
It's gotta be at least a 3.5.
Right, but that's the thing. Like it's just quality over quantity almost every single time. And regardless, the fact that you're throwing this giant, like in a lot of cases, I'm throwing a 7 to 8 inch big swim bait. But when it gets trucked, it's the greatest feeling in the world. But it's a grind.
I'm not going to go into a tournament throwing that shit.
No.
Absolutely not. Unless the tournament starts at 4 a.m, I can throw that rat all morning.
Well, right. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, that for me, that's the biggest thing where like I love throwing it and I throw them very consistently. Starting last year, actually probably even 3 years ago, I started throwing them. Last year is when I really started throwing them consistently, which to the point where like I went and bought 2 rods specifically for throwing giant baits. And one of them was a custom rod. This year I bought an actual proper Super Duty rod from Lose, and I'm having a second, so that'd be my second custom rod built from Wicked Custom Rods. So I'll have 3 big boy swim bait rods rated. Okay. One's rated 3 ounces, one's rated 4 ounces, one will be rated to 6 ounces.
Which one am I getting?
You're getting the same one as me from Wicked Custom that's rated to 6 ounces. It's 1 to 6. Cool. And it's an 8-foot heavy extra fast, I think is what it is.
Good.
And it's that North Fork composite X-ray blank. So it's like stupid light.
So it's like an ounce?
Not quite that light.
It's like 2-3 ounces?
Yeah, probably. I think the blank alone was 2.5 ounces, which is insane for an 8-foot rod. Maybe it was 2.5, but whatever. Like anyway, you get my point.
It's a light rod.
Yeah. So Andrew, for your point, what baits do you throw consistently but don't feel confident with?
I'm trying to think.
It's a good question because you have to be willing to learn.
Yep.
To throw something that you're not good at
I
using.
Literally just started throwing Carolina rig.
And crushed him.
And I have all the confidence in the world with it.
Spinnerbait, I think, would probably be the next one because you threw it a lot, but it was one of those things that you said you're like, about for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I caught my first big bass on it on spinnerbait when I was like 11.
Yeah. I think, like, because that's
other
one of the
than that,
conversations.
I never really threw it.
We've had that conversation a lot. Like, man, like, conditions look ideal. I'm going to throw this. Maybe you should throw it. And you're like, I know, but I don't really have confidence in it. But you still throw it.
But I still throw it a lot.
Right.
It's grown. My confidence has definitely grown in that.
You've had a couple of good bites on that this year.
Yeah, I have.
So spinnerbait?
Probably spinnerbait. Maybe, I was going to say jerkbait, but I'm not going to say that.
He says like one of your confidence baits. What about you, Sheron?
I don't know. I don't really have one.
For me, it's a glide bait / swim bait. I haven't caught a keeper size bass yet. I've caught one pickerel, 1 pike, and I spent probably about small money, probably about $250 over the course of 3 years, and 2 rods dedicated to that because I saw what they do down in Lake Hartwell. I saw these guys wielding these big baits like you picture a jig. Like it was I knew that they had some serious setups. I mean, these
Yeah.
guys are half my size, and they were literally going along docks, just throwing that swim bait alongside of the dock, and I was impressed with just the way they were throwing that big bait. That's how I knew that I didn't have the right bait, but I definitely had the right rod. You know what I mean? Because the bait should never overpower the rod. So if you're throwing a big swim bait, then that rod's got to be powerful. So I invested a little bit in it. I'm giving it about maybe 15 minutes tournament time. That's all it's getting right now, which is
First
a
light
couple choice casts. You know what I mean?
before you
I've
launch.
seen a couple fish come out, but I haven't produced yet. And then a spy bait. You know,
Ooh,
that
I haven't
was-
caught a fish with a spy bait yet, but
I got
on
confidence
these
in
bodies
that.
of water where it's supposed to work. You know what I mean? So I'm giving that about 20 minutes too. I haven't dedicated a day yet to either one of those tactics, but I have dedicated like an hour and a half of like regular fishing time. They still haven't produced for me yet. You know what I mean? So I'm still working on it. So I keep trying, you know what I mean? Because eventually I'll figure out get somewhere. But I haven't caught a big bass yet on a swim bait like I did. Guys catch a lot of big fish with swim baits, but I haven't done it yet. Not yet.
Yeah,
I
Keep working on it.
still think conventional fishing, just not like just regular traditional fishing tactics instead of like the big swim baits. You still catch giant fish that way. You just got to be in the right place at the right time.
Yep. I have to add to this because Sean, you just said spy bait, and that's something I'm growing confidence in, but I don't throw quite enough, so it doesn't apply for me. However, on that realm of finesse baits, and speaking to Andrew's point about conventional, to answer that question, Demiki rig. How many times have I thrown that Demiki
A
rig
lot.
the last 2-3 years?
A lot.
How many fish have I caught?
I don't know.
0.
Oh, none.
0.
See?
Dude, I have thrown it in like I mean, Sean, you must have seen it, right? Like when you're drop shotting. And for the most part, smallmouth, if you're video game fishing, they're feeding down like it. You drop a drop shot down on them, you end up catching the crap out of them. But then there's like a change in the day. And they're not really quite going down. They're reacting to it. You watch that boomerang come down on it, but they don't quite get to the bottom with it. And they stay like a foot or two above it, and then they just kind of piss right off.
Yep, they're done.
That's when I try and throw the Demiki rig. Like that to me screams like Demiki rig. That's if they're not going all the way down, that's where you should be throwing. From everything I've ever read and what my friends that do well with it, like that's where you should throw it. And Andrew can attest to it. How many times I've had it tied on its own setup, and I'll drop it down and I'll watch those fish come in and look at the damn thing and I'll eat it.
Yeah, a lot.
What I've learned is there's a time and a place to really master a lure, right? Like the chatterbait, it excels in grassy lakes, right?
Yep.
So using it in a place that doesn't have grass doesn't mean it's not going to work, but is a place where it excels. What I've learned, drop it in front of fish. Ideally, it works better in the wintertime, right? Because fish are congregated, they don't think as much. You also tend to be fishing deeper, so fish tend to be deeper, And if you just look at guys around here that have some success, I'll say no names, but up in Maine at certain lakes, it works really well,
I know who he's talking about.
Try it like on like a place like Webster Lake or something, and it may not work really well, So you're doing nothing wrong, just that it's not in the ideal setting. You know what I mean? So now you're getting good mechanically, but because you're not using it in the best setting, it takes longer, for the results to work. Like me, I know I'm throwing these swim baits in some tournament lakes where they see stuff, so I know it's gonna be harder, right? I have yet to go to, I think, a time of the year or a fishery where I think they're a little bit more behind, or even at nighttime, because
Where they're
believe it or
just
not,
dumber.
Fish make a lot of mistakes at nighttime, so you can get away with a lot of big lures that aren't as effective as you may think they are. It's just that at nighttime, fish focus on vibration.
Yep.
They don't rely on their eyes because they can't see nothing,
Right.
and they can't scrutinize the same way. So the best time to make a big fish make a mistake is at nighttime.
There it is.
Flat out, because they don't scrutinize. You know what I mean? So, but I'm not going to go out at nighttime and develop confidence in some big baits because it's not applicable to how I fish and what my goals are as a tournament professional fisherman. So I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to be in that same situation. You know what I mean? Not knocking anyone at all. It's a time and place for everything. That's a good way to get your confidence up. It's not going to work for me. I want to see the bait. I want to see the fish come out after it, and I want to see him hit it. And once I see that happen, my confidence goes from 0 to 100. I only need one fish for it to work. It just hasn't worked yet. And I got some good baits. I got a couple good ones. I ain't like some people that have just like a lot, like, Cameron Smith or Tommy Weber. I only know a couple guys that have some good baits. And I know you do too, but I don't know you to that degree. I know you're getting busy with chatterbait, and that's what I ask you questions about, you know what I mean? But there's other people ask questions about a particular tactic because they're better than me, like Rich LeBlanc, who's killing the game with what he's making. It's perfected, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think when I really want a lesson, I'm calling that dude up, hopping the crowd after him, and go get my game up. But I'm not there yet, you know what I mean? Because it's still a small percentage for me. But when I find myself going to these bigger bodies of water where they have these really, really big fish, best believe I'll have a lot more confidence in that particular bait because that's where it's going to excel at a lot more than my area, around here.
Right.
Right. And that's dude, that's like one of the things I've said almost every time. Like, well, this year is a little different for those bigger baits because I've just been craving that bigger bite. But prior to this season specifically, I have maintained, like, as much as I keep buying, everyone's like, oh, are you getting the big swim bait bite? I'm like, no, it's just I've had a couple of good days where it's literally just another tool in the toolbox. Just like any other conventional tackle. Like, I've had good days where, like, that is the bait to be throwing versus a jig, versus a crankbait, whatever. Like, that's just, dude, they want a friggin' meal today. And I've had, like, last year I had 3 or 4 good days where, like, that was it. But it's just like anything else. Like, I've had 3 or 4 good days where, like, a 5-inch craw with a 1/2-inch friggin' bullet weight was the bait to go to. Like, that was the difference maker. It's getting to that next level of very, very specifically what they're looking for that sets you apart from everybody else. And that's where this, like, prior to this year, that's where those bigger baits have kind of fit into.
Going back to the confidence thing with the spy bait.
Yeah.
I lost the biggest smallie of my life on a spy bait, but
dude, that was
I
pushing 6.
still have
I'm so sorry.
Wow.
I still have all sorts of confidence.
St. Lawrence.
No,
Actually, well, Lake Ontario,
that
actually.
was out on
Stone Island.
Stone Island.
Man, those fish are so much bigger up there now. When I first started up there, getting 17 pounds it wasn't a bad day, right? But the most you can get in the river was about 17 pounds, and getting 17 pounds of smallmouth over 3 days in the river wasn't really going to happen. You had to go out to the big lake. I just saw some guys that were fishing up there last month, and they showed me their repeller weight cull scale, right? They had 4 fish over 6 pounds.
Oh my gosh!
And then 1 over 7 pounds.
That's
all
insane.
All up in the river.
It's all the gobies.
Last time I had a big event there was when the Eastern Regional was there for Waddington, and a couple of Canadian guys came in with 25-pound bags in the river up there, where just prior to that, Brandon Polnick was able to get, the way he got by driving 100+ miles down to Ontario, so
Right.
in Ontario there's
Right at that dock.
8s. I haven't seen the 9 yet, but there's 8s in whatever else that's out there, but in the river now you have 6s and 7s. I think KBD, when he went over there, was the first person I think that actually caught a 6-pound smallmouth in a tournament. You know what I mean? And that said something right there. It didn't resonate, but it said something. Now, it's possible for somebody to come in with like a 20, 26, 27-pound bag of smallmouth each day, and we might see that next week.
Look at Paul Mueller last year.
It's crazy up there,
He had 30 pounds.
Right. You're pretty close. He had 27. There was 2 guys last year in Lake
28 pounds.
the St. Lawrence, but they were fishing in Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
Paul Mueller and Chris Johnston both had 27-pound bags on 5 fish.
That's what it was,
But then
27,
this year, adding on what Sheron just said, there was guys. Was it Mike? If you're still here, Mike Klassen in the chat. Was that was it the Renegade series in Canada? Or is it somebody else? Mike lives in Ontario, right at the mouth of the St. Lawrence River, and he's very well versed. Thousand Islands Open has been 25 plus per day for a couple of years now. Yeah, there you go. There was someone that won a tournament. Was it a couple weeks ago or a month ago? 31 pounds on 5 fish. They hit the dirty 30 on the 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
On all
you
smallmouth.
sent me that
31
picture.
pounds, smallmouth.
That's insane. And
It
that's
is, 'cause
I was
now you
right.
don't have to
Renegade.
travel. You don't have to travel like you did before. You know what I mean?
Well,
Right.
Well, we don't.
I'm excited about that because I don't like going to that lake anyway. I go to the mouth and I'm like, and I turn around. I've been
Too big.
as far as Shamont Bay, It's just not fun for me.
We went
fact
all
that
the
now
way
you
out.
can go upriver and catch 25 to 30 pounds. I'm like excited. You know what I mean? Because now I'm like, yes, I don't have to worry about seasickness. I can handle the river. I don't have to go out in the lake now. So looking forward to going there for the Bassmaster Open in September.
Dude, I'm so glad you said something about the seasickness, because this last trip when I had motor problems and I'm looking down at my phone like this for like an hour, and just that steady rock, dude, all of a sudden I looked up at Andrew, I'm like, I don't feel good. And he's like,
It's 1 minute with me. If I take my eye off of the water and look down,
yep.
it's done. Like I can't tie a knot. I can't make adjustments. Like to prepare for Erie, like and everyone's like Dramamine. I take Dramamine. I have wristbands. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I stay focused. And you have to constantly like spit. You know, and you gotta have like you gotta make yourself burp so you don't build gas in your stomach. I go through all this stuff, but if I don't get any adrenaline, you know, then nausea kicks in. If I take it's crazy. Like it's always that lake is always in motion, right? So I mean, I don't know when it sits still, but it's always in some kind of motion. And once the brain loses where the belly button it is, it will not recuperate. It will not catch it back. It doesn't catch it back until you get on land. But then you have headaches. You feel weak. You don't have an appetite.
Dude,
that's the whole process of getting it done. And I've been there. I've been on the Great Lakes. Like I've been on Sandusky, Ohio in Erie. I've been in Buffalo in Erie. I've been in Prescott Bay twice. I've been on Lake Ontario a couple times. In boats as a co-angler and in my own boat. And it doesn't matter, you know, it's happened on Winnipesaukee twice because my head was down. Next year I'm like, oh man. And you can't shake that. Like you can go into some calmer water, but it's not really so much mind over matter because your brain is like, yo, I don't know where the body is. I don't know where the belly is. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm upside down.
Yep.
What are you gonna do? You can't. You don't say, oh, trust me, I got this, brain. Just check out. We're gonna trust our balance here. It doesn't work like that, you know. I don't drink beer, you know, much at all. But when I fish the Great Lakes, I get off the water. I drink a Coors and I let out this huge belch. And after that belch comes out, I feel better. And then I'm mad because I'm like, man, it happened again. You know what I mean? So, but it's been my nemesis, and it's something you really can't shake, you know. So my strategy for fishing Lake Erie was try to go out there for 3 hours, see if I can get some bites, and then get back. But if I wasn't getting bites, it wasn't going to work. So each time I went and practice out there, I never got any smallmouth. I got a couple drum, and then I got sick. And I'm like, you know, this is not working for me. I'm not going to try to force my way into doing something that I can't do. You know what I mean? But now that at least I know, you know, like 1,000 miles, I don't have to go out to Lake Ontario to catch fish. I'm like, I'm excited. This is tournament strategy. All these Great Lakes, there's some kind of river around, and you can go in a river. You can catch fish and not deal with the stuff you're dealing with on the lake. So you may not win the tournament, but you can still cash a check doing that. You know, the guys that cash check catching largemouth on Lake Erie. So don't think that you have to do what the Masters are doing. You may not win that tournament, but you can still survive, you know, to win Angler of the Year or win the race at the end of the season. You know what I mean? And that's the lesson I learned for myself. I ain't gonna try and force it anymore.
Yep.
You know?
There's no reason to. You just get stressed out when you do that.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, it ain't no fun. I had no fun, man. I had no fun at all up there getting jostled around in the lake. It's not fun.
No. Dude, we're 20 miles out.
We won't say where we were, but I guess for anyone that knows the area, we ran. We didn't do it last year because it was in Canada.
No, we weren't allowed to. Legally, weren't allowed to go out there.
But 2019, we ran 20 miles out into Lake Ontario, my little 19-foot skeeter. And dude, the first 30 minutes, I had that thing pinned, and it was glass, and it was amazing until then we look back, we're like, oh, looking all around, there's no land anywhere. So I'm looking at my graph, I'm like, just maintain course, just maintain course.
The curvature of the earth on those Great Lakes.
Seriously, Ken, it's insane.
Dude, it's nuts.
The only time our phones started going ping, 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 when the
big tankers went by.
Yeah, when the big
That's fun in the river, man. I play around with those tanks, man. I jump through the waves, so I have fun. All the big ships that you see going down
it's cool.
The St. Lawrence River.
Yeah,
different colors, different names, different nationalities and stuff. I got a lot of highlights doing that. You know what I mean? That's fun, but that's the extent of it.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, we've been out there in some rough stuff, and then that same year, the first year we went, 2019.
Oh man,
we were just in Chamonix Bay, and it was ridiculous. And I remember because we had talked to you that night, and you're like, "Dude, go to the river." Yeah. And in my head, I kept thinking, like, "What's it gonna matter? The wind is it's dog shit." And you're like, "Dude, it's not that bad." So we finally went up there. I was like, "Oh god damn it, I should have just listened to him because it was glass."
I learned the hard way, man.
Yeah, we were in freaking 5, 6, 7. I don't even know how big those waves were. They were huge.
Yeah, at one point we hit a series of rollers where like I could feel my whole body like starting to crumple because I wasn't prepared for my boat nose to go up that high. And I looked back and down at Andrew.
I was
like,
looking up at him like, holy shit.
That had to have been like a legitimate 5 or 6 foot wave that we rolled over.
If not bigger, yeah.
And we were in the bay. Like, the wind wasn't even running into it that hard. It wasn't like 100% perfect deadline shot. It was off by like 20 or 30 degrees. So it was coming in, but it wasn't like straight line. And it was still, holy crap.
Dude.
Yeah, those road waves, man. I was with a guy from Georgia, and dude just went 60 miles an hour, big fat dude. They can absorb the shock, and the way a boat hits the water, it goes like this, you know. So if you're not the driver, you're the passenger. You're constantly getting that. It gets to the point where you're trying to, trying to save yourself from the shock.
I am
because you
a
land
lot
sideways. You kind of actually get jammed. To this day, I get a little pain back here in my hip from a couple of guys that didn't know how to ride their boat on the Great Lakes. They only went one speed. You know what I mean? But
so sometimes you got to slow it down.
To this day, I can do push-ups, do a lot of sit-ups and stuff. I'm in a lot better shape, but particularly because I know I got to go out in that rough stuff, man. And if you're not in somewhat good shape, you're going to be hurting a little bit more. You know what I mean? After 2 or 3 days of practice like that, it's tough. I haven't fished for 7 days in a few years. It's just that airy. I felt it like by day 3. I felt it like, man, I'm feeling it right now, and I got like 4 more days of fishing already, and I was feeling it. You know what I mean?
Hurts after the second day.
Getting physically fit is a good way to be ready to go out there and challenge those Great Lakes, but you got to have everything working right, all around, and it's still some risk out there,
Right.
It gets scary quick.
Yes, it does.
Real scary, real quick.
It's been scary. But to those guys, it's not scary. You know what I mean? But I will tell you this: I go out there, I come back here. We can have 70-mile-an-hour winds, and I'll go out on Webster Lake. I'm fine. I'm like, what's going to happen to me? I just came from Lake Erie. I just came from Lake Ontario. I seen where I could die out there. I'm like, what's going to happen to me here? So it puts things in complete perspective. Wind is not wind until you get on those larger bodies of lake.
No, wind is
larger
nothing.
Bodies of water, and then you see what wind actually does to a lake. There's nothing that can harm us around here. You go to Watuppa or whatever side, you see some waves here and there, but that's a small stretch where you might deal with some adverse conditions. Then you can tuck behind an island. You don't tuck behind anything in the Great Lakes. Like, you just don't go tuck.
There is nothing to tuck behind.
Once you're out there, you're like out there until it's time to come back. You know what I mean? So different experience.
We said that the first year we came back. Like, we went out, I think we were on Newfound. And it was some pretty rough waves.
2.5 footers. We're just like,
yeah, we just kept it pinned. We'll race right across
50,
that.
60
nothing.
Across the whole thing, just skipping across the top of them, whatever.
Yeah. And even this year, we went to Newfound. And, unfortunately, we heard that there may have been one person that lost their life that day.
A couple people.
We came back to the boat launch, and we had speared a wave. Like a minute before we got back to the launch. We were coming down that last stretch to it. And I took my eyes off the lake for 1 second to say something to Andrew. Yep, and I speared it. Dude, that wave hit me so hard. And
I lose my glasses, yeah.
Sunglasses ripped off, but like
water, yeah.
On my amphibias, it's this giant rubber piece that it's huge. And it hit me so hard that I still cut the bridge of my nose through that rubber piece from my sunglasses slamming into my face that hard. Like everybody for the next week, they're like, they'll happen to your nose. I'm like, what are you talking about? and I kept forgetting like how much I cut my nose because we got hit that hard. And Andrew was still laughing because after we hit it, I'm like the moment I stopped feeling like I was drowning, I remember looking down being like, okay, boat's not completely full of water, okay. And I'm like, where are my sunglasses? Oh, they're there. And I reached down and my whole hood was full of water. When I reached down, it's just like
dude, I like cinched. I was getting ready for a hurricane on the way before we even started going.
Was I ruined freshly baked chocolate chocolate.
No.
Foil. I looked down and they were floating in the water. I was so upset. I don't spare any waves. Strategy for a lot of you guys out there in the water. I mean, I'm no big water expert, but I've been in a lot of big water. I've been in big water with a 16.5-foot Ranger up in Thousand Islands on Lake Champlain, the same size boat that Hank Parker won, and it's classic up there. So boats float, but you gotta take it easy. Hopping waves is nice. Riding waves is nice, but there's an optimum speed that keeps the boat moving. It keeps the boat floating.
Yep.
And that's the optimum speed you should operate on. For me, it's like 28 to 31 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's pretty much what
It's
we
the safe
found too.
speed, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? I know I can go in any kind of situation with my boat, with my legend boat, definitely, and be fine. You know, I pride myself on getting there and back. I pride myself on not tearing up my equipment. I don't think that's something to brag about. You know, and I pride myself on not getting my co-angler wet. You know, I had some co-anglers with white knuckles questioning themselves in life or what they're doing. I'm gonna say is like, listen, man, you're good with me. I got this. We're gonna get back. Fishing may not be good, but I guarantee you we're gonna get back. So I'm gonna make the right decisions. You know what I mean? So it's really important with the tournament strategies is knowing the limitations of your boat. You know, make sure you got an automatic float build switch. That they are a must. You know, it's true. Rangers don't float. I've had a Ranger boat get submerged on Lake Champlain. Not they float. They don't sink. You know, shit didn't sink. It saved my life. Even the Mercury engine went under the water, but the bow of the boat still stayed up. You know, it happened off of Woods Island. It's not a lie. It was like probably 15, 16 years ago. And that's when I
Jeez.
changed my perspective on how to handle big water and realize that, you know, an automatic bilge pump is what you need. Make sure you have plenty of bungee cords. You can strap everything down, you know what I mean? And take your time and dress right, you know, meaning just rain suit and like base layer underneath because you're going to get wet. That you can change to some dry clothes, keep dry clothes in a bag, let people know where you're going to go, and then you can handle the rough water. And my advice to anybody that has a legit bass boat, meaning like 19 foot, 200 horsepower is kind of what you want. You know, 18 foot, 150, it could be done, but you really got to pay attention to what you're doing. If you don't have a hot foot, you can break the throttle. I've had boats where, you know, it's hard because now you got to steer with one hand and you got to hold the throttle one hand. So that's not the ideal way to go in big water. You want to be able to have your hands on the steering wheel and you want to have, you know, a hot foot, an automatic bilge pump. And if you take your time, get the motor trimmed all the way down, you go anywhere you want in big water because the boat is designed to float. You know what I mean? It's just how you handle that water and how you handle, you know, those waves coming at you and stuff like that. You know, so it can be done, but it's good experience for anybody to get out there. Lake Champlain is one of the best lakes to learn because you can literally pick your poison where you want to launch at. It's one of the best
Where you want to die
lakes
today?
in terms of fine, calm water where you can launch your boat. It may not be the best fishing, but somewhere along that lake, and I've driven around that lake, you know, particularly on when I didn't make a cut, when I was fishing the strand series and stuff, and I didn't make a cut. I always took a long way back around, so I knew where I can go fish at another time of day, another tournament. If the wind's blowing west, I know where I can go now. If the wind's blowing north, I know where I can go now. Because somewhere on that lake, there's always some protected water. But you should jump in that protected area and kind of dabble out in that rough water so you learn how to operate your boat. You got to know what your limitations are with your boat. Once you understand your limitations, then you understand what you can and what you cannot do, you know, in tournament situations. And that could be the result of winning and losing and life and death, you know. So it's important to get out there and practice that kind of stuff. If you're trying to really do something in the tournament world, you know, you got to get out of this state. You got to get in big water, you know.
Yep.
We're the only state besides Rhode Island that really doesn't have any real big water that we can really go simulate, you know, rough water conditions. You know, with Tupper on a bad day, maybe never Webster Lake because it's not that long. There's too many islands over there. One of Basaki the Broads that can help you out a little bit over there. You know what I mean? But for the most part, you kind of got to go up to like New York. You know, getting those big lakes over there, and you see what wind really does. You know, and once you can master that stuff, you have a lot more confidence. You know, when you fish around here.
Yeah, it's definitely helped out a lot going up there and just being on like real big water.
Yeah,
Yep.
changes
Yep.
things. Like Sheron had said earlier, like that completely changes your perspective on like just
does.
boat capability, boat handling, like good decisions, bad decisions.
Okay, we can handle this. Let's go home and we can go anywhere,
Right.
literally anywhere, and
Yeah.
not be afraid of anything.
You go on Lake Ontario on a bad day, and literally anything else in New England except for Champlain with a real ugly true north or true south wind is nothing. Okay, maybe Sebago in Maine because that's pretty big.
Mm-hmm. It's wide. Yep, it's wide. Yep.
Yeah.
I saw some rough stuff there. I was there for Eastern Regional Championship in September, and I launched in the south end of the lake. I don't remember what town it was. Nice ramp, you know what I mean? Until I had to go back, and the wind was going north, you know, and my boat was dropping down. But I was probably in maybe a 100-yard stretch where I had to pay attention. Meaning, like, I do things wrong, a big wave is going to go over the boat. You know?
Right.
So it can happen over there. You know?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, it's getting kind of late. There's still a couple questions I want to get out. Well, actually, one of my coworkers, Chad, was watching the stream. He had a question earlier that I didn't get to yet. Sheron, we're gonna start with you. What is your strength and confidence baits? And I know we're really trying to talk specifically for tournaments, but it's kind of an open-ended question where, tournament or not, you're gonna have your fun fishing or tournament fishing, whatever your confidence bait is, it's gonna work for both. So what is your confidence bait that you're like, yep, I will ice out to ice in, or for the bulk of the season, like, doesn't matter what the conditions are, I can throw this or a variation of it at some point, and I feel like I can rock this the whole day.
Plastic crayfish. I can bite half of it off and put it on a jig trailer. I can fish it Texas rig. I haven't fished a crayfish bait on a drop shot, but it's very effective.
Do it.
My Carolina rig.
Do it.
You know what I mean? And just basically just fishing it that way. Texas rig is my most productive way of definitely using it. You know what I mean? So I would say a Texas rig crayfish, any kind of plastic crayfish, I'm pretty confident with using. I put it on the back of chatterbait, and it's produced well for me that way too. And just recently, I took off the pinchers and I took off the little legs, and I have like a Ned, and that started producing. I caught some fish on Shirley with just a crayfish. It was too big, right? And they were biting the claws off. So I'm like,
just rip it all off.
And the body of it is like a Ned rig, you know what I mean? So it's very versatile, a simple plastic crayfish, you know what I mean? So
nice.
That's the big.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea. But yeah, dude, you should absolutely be throwing crawfish type baits on a drop shot. We've had over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, we've had some pretty good luck on it.
It's pretty good luck.
Really?
Really good luck on it.
There's a couple of different ones out there, and there's one that I don't want to blow up because I don't really know anybody that fishes it, but my God, does it work on a variety of different finesse setups. And I've caught like a lot of good fish on it, either shaky head or drop shot. One thing I really want to try, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like talking about it, I think that particular one on a Ned rig would actually probably look really good. On a heavier Ned rig.
Which one are we talking about?
The one, remember we fished the Merrimack tournament river? Merrimack River tournament 2 years ago.
Yes.
Middle of July. It was like 100 degrees.
Yep.
And I caught the winner basically at the end of the day, that 2.2 whatever that called out that rat we had.
Yeah.
Drop shotting a little 4-inch friggin' finesse craw.
Yep.
Mike's here. Mike knows what I'm talking about because Mike and then John, the owner of Dragon Custom Tackle, are the ones that put me onto that. And they're like, don't you dare tell anybody about that bait. And I haven't. And it's come in clutch, and especially on a drop shot. It works killer. Even Lakes region, like Newfound, there's some days where like we know just because of the way they're feeding, and then we get them in the live well, or if they spit it up on the way up, they're in their fight, like they're spitting up crawfish, just throwing that on instead of like your typical drop shot, like, minnow style bait, whether it be magic flick, or if you're doing something a little bit bigger, like just a 5-inch finesse worm, whatever. Yeah. Just sometimes throwing that, I can't tell you how many days I've had where throwing that, just a little 3 to 4-inch finesse craw, but slim profile, has been killer.
I won a lot of big fish money with crayfish lures.
Yep.
A lot, yeah, a lot.
Andrew, I already know what your answer is.
What is it?
Jig.
Yeah.
Mine too. I can literally fish a jig, ice out to ice in. I've literally caught fish on lakes with ice on a portion of it still.
I've caught my
at
PB
the beginning and end of the year.
In both species on a jig.
Yep. So the first one was your 7-pound, 7-ounce largemouth.
Yep.
3 years ago. We snowblowed the friggin' boat launch
3
days before he caught it.
Same one I caught 2 years in a row on a jig.
And then last year, end of November, in 50 feet of water.
Yep.
On another jig for your PB smallmouth.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Dude, I there's something about the universal versatility of a jig that I will never be able to shy away from. But second to that, I'm with you, Sheron. I'm going Texas rig. It's just, that's the second most versatile thing I can use. Actually, no, I would say a Texas rig bait is more versatile than a regular jig, because you can fish it through literally anything, and it's rarely going to get hung up, and it works.
You can have it weighted.
You can adjust it just by the weight size. So with the jig, whatever the size of the jig is, you can adjust your drop speed, by changing your trailer, but you really can't do too much to a 3/8 ounce jig that's a 3/8 ounce jig. Right. You can't do too much to the 1/2 ounce jig, but the plastic craw, you adjust that by the weight completely. You know what I mean? And like I said, now you can, Bluegill will bite off one claw. Before I switch it out, I pitch it around for a little while with one claw, and I've caught fish
Oh,
with just one claw on the
I mean,
plastic.
there's crayfish swimming around with one claw, so
Right.
They're always on. What I realized, they don't hibernate. And they're different sizes, different hues throughout the year. So they constantly change, but they don't hibernate. So fish do eat them year round.
Yep.
right.
They don't hibernate like frogs and stuff like that.
Yep. It's funny because I haven't used them yet because I keep forgetting to buy something to throw in the damn thing. But I bought 2 crayfish / baitfish traps for this season because I had the intention of when we go out fishing to throw one super shallow and throw one super deep. And from what I've been told, you can just throw in like a can of cheap cat food and just crack a couple holes in it, and just the juices, everything floating out is enough to attract just random crap. But I wanted to do that throughout the year in a variety of different lakes because I wanted to see, like, okay, in April in a super shallow kettle pond, how do the crayfish differ from crayfish in, say, like Lake Winnipesaukee in April?
They're big in the lakes region. They're bigger than I thought they were. I don't see many crayfish, but they're big. I remember staying, I think it was Lake Sunapee. It was back when I had my little John boat and I stayed up there. I used to recommend to retire in the Dallas. I used to take my fishing trips. That's how I got a lot of fishing experience. I have patience of a saint. I could deal with some that were talking, some that were just really, really hyper, some that were just really aggressive. I was a big guy. I could handle them.
Right.
But my specialty was taking them, up to the lakes region for a week, and I got paid to fish and bring, someone that really didn't had limited mobility, limited outdoor exercise, and bring them to something that us folks that are normal that can do on a whim. You know what I mean? And it worked out great. I get to fish and I get free meals, and I was spending time with so kind of like giving back to human services. Eventually got out. I got an IT, but that's kind of what I did. But I remember going out at night with a flashlight, and I saw some big crayfish on Lake Centipede, right along the edge, because they sit up under those little crevices, and it's an actual nocturnal creature for the most part. They're not really out in the daytime. When you think about it, something this big ain't really trying to be seen by anything, you know what I mean? So at nighttime, there's a little more stealth, but you can shine the light and you can actually see them. So it's a good way to see crayfish in the water without having to turn over rocks. Just got to walk out at night on the edge, and they're around, but it's big crayfish in the lakes region.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I believe it. And yeah, dude, especially for like, before I got a bass boat, I had a 14-foot flat bottom John boat that my dad had bought before I was born. And now we're talking 20 years ago. When I first got my license, I was 16, because I'm 36 now. We used to go out night fishing a ton because I hated dealing with all the traffic and the little ponds around me and just, the absurd amount of people. And I had this little dinky freaking tow motor. I couldn't go anywhere to really get away from people. In the middle of the summer, I'm like, well, forget this. And I didn't really know anything back then. So I used to go out, and when I first started really branching out, now like 15, 16 years ago at this point, a jig, like one of our neighbors, that's all that guy threw. The old jig and pig, the Uncle Josh's pork rind, whatever friggin' trailer thing, right? Which I don't even know if you can get those things anymore. But like
they made a comeback now. So
did they?
Gone. Yeah, they recently made a comeback. So they are definitely around now. Marketing not as big, but they're around. They're available again.
Nice. All right. So like it was our neighbor across the pond from us where we live here in town, and guy used to catch giants all the time. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna fish a jig. And when I went out night fishing, that was one of my favorite things to do, was to throw on what at the time I thought was a big football jig, but it's probably only a ½ ounce. It just seemed like a giant, and throwing like big crawl trailer on it. And I'd work these sand flats where there's a bunch of freshwater mussels and it was otherwise clear, and you could always hear the fish blowing up on that. And I'd take that giant jig and I'd just bomb it up on the shore, almost on the bank, and just drag it. But like make exaggerated drag, so it's creating a bunch of commotion down there and spitting up dirt, and I would crush fish. Back when I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. But dude, dragging a jig on those flats at night was killer.
That's what Doug Hannon said too. I don't know if you know who Doug Hannon was.
Oh yeah,
late great
Hannon,
the bass professor.
I just posted a video of him.
You told me about
major
it.
tactics he said about using a jig was a quarter-ounce jig, particularly red and black. Bounced off of a sandy night, because particularly on a new moon, because it's a silhouette that the jig makes with over a light bottom, which is really a highly effective technique. But you look up his book, I think it's Big Bass Magic, Doug Hannon, the bass professor, you'll see that was a pretty key tactic for night
Yep. I gotta get into that. There's so much
Yeah, I got a
reading
lot
that
of
I need to
books. I read
do.
a lot of books on fishing. I met him. I met him twice. You know.
Really?
Nice.
And, yeah.
That's cool.
Dylan B asked you guys ever try the Rains ring craw. I have not.
Yeah, man. I have. You know, I bought some. It's funny. I'll buy lures, and I won't get around to using them for 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think where I was at, where all of a sudden that became the trailer of choice. And then I just run right through them. I had like things like an Okeechobee craw, you know, 'cause I know Paul's been talking about the Rains, Paul Mueller for the Rains ring craw for years, you know what I mean? But they have 2 sizes, you know, a small size like the size of my thumb, and then like a little bit larger size, like almost 3 inches. But something about that lure, it's kind of weird, but it worked pretty good. I was using it on a small micro jig, I think, and I went through them just recently. But I had them in my tackle box for like 3 years. You know, I bought them up in Connecticut and never used them, and then finally used them. You know, I think I bought them for Sebago, and ended up not using them over there. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's effective bait. I didn't buy any more. You know what I mean? I just bought them and used them, but I haven't bought any more. But it was effective. It was effective.
Nice.
To try them.
Yeah, I can look into those. Real quick, Lisa, if you're still here watching the stream, thank you very much. It's not going to show
Thank
up
you.
because she donated directly to, I think, PayPal or Venmo. I don't know. I have it in the video description. You guys can donate for anyone that is willing. I mean, if you do it through YouTube, they take a cut. It is what it is, but I know it's easy. I also have my PayPal and Venmo right there in the video description for like 100% of that goes towards us. And Lisa just made a $20 donation. So thank you, Lisa. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well on our way towards that next camera so we can upgrade the quality of the streams and bring that thing out more efficient too. So again, thank you, Lisa. That was very, very generous of you. To the chat again, Derek M asked, do you change colors as the crawfish spawn or molt, or do you stick with the typical watermelon red?
No.
Change colors.
I changed colors. And it's funny that he asked that question because often I don't know what the hatch is that I'm matching, but then I'll get some validation, you know, at the end of the day when I see a crawfish spit up, I'm like, oh, I figured out the right color, you know. So I had a revelation. I was fishing Otis Reservoir. It was a Connecticut River shootout tournament. I showed up solo. It's a team event, but it's 5 fish, so I showed up. And I caught 3 good fish flipping the reeds, and then the lake woke up, like, you know, the recreation activity. And I didn't know where else to go. You know, I didn't want to damage my boat, so I didn't know where else to go. So I ran out of the stuff I was fishing, the pattern I was fishing. I ran out. You know what I mean? But I came pretty close to catch and check with just 3 fish. I think the winner was like 11.5 or 12 pounds, and the last money spot was like 9.9 or something like that. And I had 3 fish and 9 pounds. These guys were pretty impressed, and they were largemouth, you know. And I was using a Veracity based jig at the time. Actually, it was called LTD, Living the Dream jigs. You know, now they're called Veracity jigs, right? And they're lead free. You know, and lead free is pretty good because it has a slower fall. Something you guys should pay attention to. You have lead, you have tungsten, you have lead free. They all drop differently, you know. So it's a little tip right there, a tournament tip. Lead free lures, they don't feel the bottom is good, but they have entirely different drop speed than any other lure out there. So something you want to pay attention to, particularly when you're fishing docks and stuff, is use a non-lead jig, and you'll see some difference. But I caught fish with 2 different crayfish patterns. You know, I just figured it out. And at the end of the day, and I have this picture on my Instagram. You go to my Instagram page right now. You have to scroll back a few years, where you'll see a picture of these 2 jigs, and you'll see the 2 crayfish exoskeletons next to them, and it's like for like. But
I think I saw that
out on a whim. You know what I mean? But it validates things when you realize just how important you are some days on the water, when you see you're actually matching the hatch without really knowing what the hatch was. You know what I mean? So
yep, we just did that on Sunday. One of the things that we learned several years ago. Especially me talking to other people, like, oh yeah, you know, like I caught a fish and it spit this up, so I kind of knew like they were doing that, or I checked my live well at the end of the day and I saw this, and that was one of those things I never paid attention to. I just always knew that like black and blue in really cold water or stained, and then just green pumpkin with or without browns for warmer water, and just those 2 colors. That's all I needed. I guess technically 3. But then, like, the last couple of years, I really started paying attention to, like, the little nuances. Like, when they start to molt and they get orange in it. Like, that matters greatly. And now all of a sudden I have, like...
Orange is definitely my jam.
Yep. So I've got, like, 6 or 7 different jig colors now because I'm... That's literally what I love to do anyway about bass fishing in general, is I'm... Everything I find that I like to do, I like to break it down to that next level. And then once I get that mastered, is there another level that I can go even further with it? And that's... when I started really getting better with my jigs. So on Sunday, we caught a good smallmouth. I think it was the first one I caught in the drop shot. And
Yep.
where I was like, let's throw in the live well because I want to know what they're eating. Because almost always the smallmouth will spit up whatever the hell it is that they've eaten at some
Something,
point.
yeah. As long as you get them deep, they usually spit it up.
Yeah. So what was it? 20 minutes later, you looked in, you're like, yep, there it is. And it spit up
Hey, look.
some crawl legs. And it was a perfect green pumpkin. And just the very tip was orange. I
Yep.
mean, like, if the leg was an inch
Literally.
long, only in 30 seconds of it was
Orange. Just literally just the tip was just orange.
I was working a spider jig, just straight green pumpkin, which is usually pretty good this time of the year, but I wasn't really getting bit. So, and I keep a variety of either, I have a couple of dyes, but for the most part, I just have markers. I had an orange one, so I took one out and I went like about a quarter of an inch of the tip of the tails on my hula grub. Touched them up really quick. I caught a fish on that next cast. And then I ended up, that was my best producing bait for the day. So it's fun. And then that and a shaky head with, it's more of a brown than a green pumpkin for this craw trailer, but the tips were chartreuse. And that was my second producing. And even though it wasn't a perfect match, just the fact that there was that little bit of difference in the hue between the main body color and the tips was enough. And like those were the two best things for the day. So yeah, Derek, that's the very long-winded, elaborate answer to your question from both of us. Like, yeah, absolutely
you
change
have
it.
one or two you can start with. You know, black blue's always tried and true, but a lot of people use all black jig, and you don't really see all black crayfish around here. You know what I mean? But it still works. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Me, I favor green, orange, brown, orange, but in the springtime, I use red and black. I use red and black up until the water's about 52 degrees. You know, and it works really well. But the last 3 years, I've been using brown and orange, and that's been tried and true. Up in Maine, I used black and orange, and that was pretty much tried and true. You know what I mean? So you can't go wrong when you have some kind of natural colors around. But I think the overall motion or movement, of the crayfish is still more appealing than the actual color, of the crayfish. You know what I mean? So.
Yep, I agree with that. I mean, we've had plenty of days where just straight dragging it and soaking it, especially more often than not, just soaking the damn thing. Don't touch
They
it.
see it. They see it.
Yep.
It's there.
Just that bulk of it sitting there is good enough for them. Like, yep, okay, I see it. I'm gonna come down and check it out. Ah, okay, yeah, what the hell? I'll eat that.
I mean, how was I catching them on the Carolina rig? I was literally just letting it sit there.
Yep.
And then they would pick it up.
Yeah, that's how I started catching with the spider jig, and then that's how I got there was only 2 bites in the drop shot, but that's how I got both.
Yeah.
Picking my bait up a little bit, a nice like moderate kind of bend in my line, but I was definitively picked my bait up and just holding her steady.
Yep.
So it was off the bottom, but I was not moving it, and my weight was definitely on the bottom still, and just
That was an early bite though. I
Trucked it.
mean, we got there at 4:30.
yeah, it was a really early start. But I'm so glad we did that. Travis was clutch in making us all get up
Yeah,
early.
then I went out again that night.
That's right. You still did pretty good, didn't?
Yeah, well, got to the place I went to, hit the point that I usually hit, a couple points I usually hit with rock piles. Nothing. Usually you can get them on either Texas rig off that or a jig. You usually at least get a couple. There was nothing. So I went next best thing, right out to the flat, started tossing chatterbait out in the middle of freaking nowhere, and started hammering them.
Yep.
So it could be literally anywhere.
So all right. I got another question I want to ask, and it's definitely a more personal preference thing, but especially for like New England, we have so many lakes that have both largemouth and smallmouth, and there's a lot of the year where you could go either way on them, and either one's got a viable shot at winning. So I'll start with Sheron first on this, especially right now. Right, we're in that transition. The smallmouth haven't really moved out that deep yet. Largemouth, like they're kind of intermingled pretty well. Given your choice, given current conditions where both kind of have an equal shot of winning, what is your preference? Do you want to go for smallmouth, or are you more comfortable going for largemouth?
I'm more comfortable for largemouth because for the most part that usually means I'm in some kind of more protected environment, and I have to work a little bit harder, meaning I may have to make a better cast than the next man, or I may have to fish into some thickened stuff than the next angler. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Where for the smallmouth, I mean, 9 out of 10 times, unless you're on, some big fisheries in New York or something, you're gonna be kind of out in the open water. You know what I mean? Doing some open water, lighter line style type of fishing. You know what I mean? So I'll use that to get some momentum. But if given the opportunity, I'm going in and digging in versus going out and casting around, because smallmouth are kind of like more of a 360 roaming type of fish. largemouth, you kind of know you gotta drop it in front of them. You know what I mean? So that's just usually a preference of mine if it's possible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yep.
What about you, Andrew? I'm pretty sure I know your answer, but I am curious, especially after last year.
So what? Question again.
If we had a preference, like last year, end of the year, we did that tournament, we won. Like we knew either one could play, largemouth or smallmouth. But given that, where you definitively know, okay, one or the other is going to be great. Like, what is your preference? Do you want to go for largemouth or do you want to go for smallmouth?
I mean, depending on what's biting. If I'm getting more smallmouth, I'm probably going to stick with the smallmouth, and then later on in the day, I'd probably go for the largemouth. But if the largemouth are biting, I'm going to just try and keep hammering in them. And then maybe later in the day, I'll go out and try and pick up a smallmouth if I'm short on weight. But those greenfish weigh a lot, so I might just try and stick with the greenfish just to get that weight.
If I had to take a pick, it
all depends, though. It all depends on the day on what's biting better. Really. I mean, I'm comfortable catching.
Champlain is a good example. In this tournament right here, this time of year, will show you, because you do have both options. It's like one of the only lakes in the country where you legitimately have two options of catching 20 plus pounds of fish.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's true.
Just depending on July, August spawn, earlier spawn, which one, or how far you got to go for a largemouth, like you may have to go to Thai or Missisquoi or whatever. But you will see a mixed bag, or you'll see someone catch a 20 plus pound bag of either species, and you can't predict which angler it's going to be, where it's going to be from. All you know is that lake offers that. You know what I mean? So
it's crazy, though.
You see that strategy come into play.
Yeah, Champlain and Candlewood, I think, are the only two lakes.
Yeah,
really.
Candlewood too is a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the wintertime, though, see, the problem in the wintertime is smallmouth dominate. And I got some guys that are pretty good out there, and they say the largemouth just aren't around, and I have to believe them. But at one point, also, I'm like,
I don't believe
are
it.
they not around? And you just don't want to risk getting your butt kicked by smallmouth, so you don't bother trying to find
Exactly.
those largemouth. I mean, you gotta wonder, man, because that grass goes year round. The largemouth they're just not as an active fish in the cold water. They're just not. You know, smallmouth are. You catch way more smallmouth through the winter than you do largemouth.
They're cold-bodied
it's just
fish.
the way it is, particularly up here in this environment up here. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean the largemouth aren't there, and they're their heaviest in the winter times. You know what I mean? So they're really heavier. I think they're harder. You're not get them all day. You know what I mean? Where I think smallmouth, you just got a wider range of lures, wider range of depth. You know what I mean? And they're just bigger, so they dominate over there. But Candlewood's a good example. I just wonder about that cold water largemouth bite that, to me, no one has really exploited yet.
The smallmouth do like to school up a lot more in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And not be so spread out.
Yeah, it's true.
And they do come into one main area, and they do hang out for the winter.
Yeah, we got several spots like that.
Yeah.
But if we're talking right now, especially this weekend, that Bass Nation tournament on Winnipesaukee, that's not a really good example. Not because the smallmouth fishing really hasn't been the same. But if we're talking 5 years ago and earlier, this time of the year, I think you can win with either one. And I've seen it won with either one. If I had a choice and I'm in that situation, like Squam Lake was the same for a few years. Connecticut River, almost all year long, you could do the same thing. You pick one or the other. I've personally witnessed at the same time of the year, one year it was all largies that won. And then the next year, the top three guys had all smallmouth. So, in those situations where you really do have a choice between either one and you've got a solid shot, if you execute great on the day, I'm cutting against the grain. I want smallmouth because I have a hard on, man, for figuring out those smallmouth. I don't know if there's something.
You have more options. You definitely have more options. And I'm not sure who was talking about that, whether it was Mark Zona or whoever it was, but you can get a big smallmouth with the smallest lure. You know what I mean? So you have such a wide range of lures for results with the smallmouth than you do with the largemouth. You come in the largemouth water with a lure this big, you probably catch a crappie or a perch or bluegill before you catch a largemouth bass. Where in smallmouth water, you catch big ass smallmouth with a small lure like this before you catch a perch or a crappie or something like that. You know what I mean? So
right. I mean, we went 6 straight weeks to end the season last year with 20 plus pound bag of smallmouth on lures that were less than 3 inches in size.
Yep.
That was amazing. It was,
I both flipped my PB, and then I caught my PB again.
oh my God, I couldn't believe that. Dude, I'm watching the fish come up. I'm like, you want me to net it? He's like, nope, I got, I'm going to boat flip. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm like, I can see I thought it was going to be over 5. You're like, I don't know. He's boat flipping a 5-pound even freaking smallmouth. Jeez.
Whoops. My bad.
David Richardson, thank you very much, buddy. There's another donation from him direct to the old PayPal.
David.
$25. So thank you very much. Before we wrap this up, it's already 10:40. I think we've covered a lot. We didn't quite get into too specific of things for like fours and stuff, but that's okay because I think we still had a really solid conversation. A lot of different things that all play into a lot of things that impact like tournament fishing decisions. So I'm very happy with how the stream went. I had 2 questions for you. One was Night Shocker. Do you have any sponsors, Sheron? And then Brian Ernest said, do you have any social media? So take a minute, go ahead, plug both yourself for all your social media and your sponsors. Have at it, buddy. It's all you.
Arden has been a very big sponsor of mine for the last couple of years. Got some pretty good deals with them. I've been doing a lot of shows for them, so they're a key player. Vicious is another big sponsor of mine. I've been with them for over a decade. You got to have these relationships with these companies before they really start helping you out in ways that you really need to be helped out with. There's more than just discount. You know what I mean? Striker, they just came on board this past year. I mean, they really helped out a lot. It's a Rain 2 sponsor. They really helped me out. Dakota Lithium, they really blessed me with some batteries and got me really going. And I really rely on their power. Locally, lead-free bass jigs, Ken McKee, Radfish, Loaded for Bass, to name a few. Eco Pro Tungsten is my weight sponsor. I have a real estate sponsor, Alamaki Realty. Leslie Tundro right now. She's a real big help right now. J&S Business Products, they're a graphics company, so it really helps when you get a graphics company. They can help you do logos and stuff on my truck. You know what I mean? So those are some.
Yeah, it saves a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Other smaller companies that some that like not too big, like TRC covers, rod covers and stuff like that. So I have a couple companies that are around there, but the ones I name are pretty much larger ones. My job's a big sponsor. My skill set, my wife, family support is really big. You know what I mean, and kids and stuff like that. So they're all part of it. Getting sponsors, it's not easy. It's easy to start a relationship with somebody, but it's hard to really ask for the things you need and show that you're worth them spending time and money on you. So you want to establish those relationships initially. You want to work with companies that you really know them in and out. You really trust them. You know what I mean? Because no one just come up to you and just say, hey, I like you, I'm going to hook you up with some money as a product. It doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? Nothing in life really worth having. It's free, so you got to take that into consideration.
It's a lot of hard work.
Companies don't just jump around a lot. Find the companies that you really like, that you want to work with. There's still some out there that I'm hoping that they eventually notice me, I get with them, but so far it hasn't, and you just got to keep working with it. But with me, I'm always trying to save $1, so if I can learn how to use the lure that's not the best lure, but I can save 50 cents, I'm going to learn how to use that lure and save some money, you know what I mean? So that's always been my approach. What was the other question?
And then what's your social media?
Social media stuff. Hashtag SKB Fishing. Built it up myself, you know what I mean? Got a lot of sponsors, but at the end of the day, it's me that makes things work, you know what I mean? It's how I am that makes things work, so make sure I branded myself. I'm on Twitter, I am the Lunker Man, and on Instagram, SKB Fishing, you know what I mean? So you have Sheron K. Brown, which you can find. You can Google that name and find some fishing information. But you can also Google SKB Fishing, hashtag that, and you'll find a lot of information, especially the last few years, you know what I mean? So definitely around there, not as big as some people, but still working my way around. And it's important to be a local expert of where you're coming from. You're only as good as what you come up against, you know what I mean? So you got to be able to say, hey, I know Lake Winnipesaukee, I've been on Lake Champlain, I've been on the Connecticut River System, I've been on South Watuppa, I've been on the National River, you know what I mean? So before you start jumping up into the bigger, better things, make sure you do a little dump into the local people around you, because you're only as good as what you come up against, you know what I mean? So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Those handles, SKB Fishing, I'm the Lunker Man, and pretty much Arden, and other sponsors I talked about that are all on my boat.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
Dude's a hammer. Go follow him.
Brian Ernest.
Good boy.
So go ahead, guys, give him a follow. I can't do it right now because I'm not at my computer, as you can see. I'm over here at this table. But I'll add all of his social media and everything to the video description after the fact. So anybody that's watching still at this point, come back to it tomorrow morning. It'll all be there. I'll get to it tonight. Brian Ernest was the one that asked social media. So also thank you very much, dude, for the donation. He donated $26.03. So
Big ups, man. Big ups.
that's the second or third time now he's done that with the 603 in there. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
We
Always
need
down to help anybody out, man. You know, you need something, you don't have something. What good is something if you don't share it? I mean, that's how I am. You know what I mean? So feel free to reach out, ask any kind of questions. You need a boost, you need to start, you need to be pointing in the right direction. You know, each one teach one is what I'm all about.
That's why we started this.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree with that. And I can personally attest to that because, I mean, well before I was doing anything, I had asked Sheron a bunch of questions. I mean, the first time we went to the St. Lawrence, 2019.
We were pretty much, like, waiting for him to give us information.
Yeah,
he
and
did. He came
we
through.
didn't even ask you directly either. Like, I was just posting, like, dude, we're getting our asses kicked out here. And you messaged me, like,
man, you know what I mean?
I got you.
Ask me, man. Point them in the right direction. You're still going to figure it out. And the thing about sharing information is someone's always going to do it slightly different than what you do. You know what I mean? And you can take that information with you, too. So
right.
it works out that way.
Yep. And it was like, for you, for 2019, the info we got from you was better than anybody else that gave us. And I don't know if it's just a matter of your personal style of fishing more aligns with us better, or if your information was better than everybody else's, or a combination of the two. But like what you gave us not only worked great, better than anything else we got for help. Not to say that anything that we got for help from other people was bad. It was all good. Yours was just the best. But we took that into the last year's trip too, and it was still applicable. It was like,
him and Doug.
Make it agnostic, so you can kind of
and Doug.
And Doug helped us out too.
Things, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, Doug came in clutch for us too last year. We were struggling in the middle of the week, but like, oh great, second year in a row we're kicking, getting our asses kicked. He's like, well, what are you doing? And we told him, he's like, all right, go try these two spots and tell me how you do. And we did better.
Yeah, we did a lot better.
But it's just totally different conditions again too. So, and for the fact that, I was trying to put that place into perspective, and it because you've been there several times. But for people that haven't been out there, like, oh my God, you guys had 2 weeks out there. How hard can it be to figure out? Chamoun Bay alone is 9,000 acres.
It's a lot.
It took me
There's a lot going on out there.
Yeah.
10 years of fishing Newfound Lake before I got to a point where, like, even now, I feel like if there's a tournament out there, I can go out and I know it well enough that I feel I can compete against anybody in any conditions on that lake because I put my time in on that. And that is a 4,200 acre lake.
It's half the size.
Less than half the size of just Chamoun Bay. Forget the 40 miles of water we ran just in Lake Ontario, and the 40 miles of the St. Lawrence River that we ran just on the U.S. side this year. We didn't even run, like, I'm patting ourselves on the back for, between what we could do on our own and the information we got and able to still apply it, because even though people tell you what to do. Right. Mm-hmm. And I got skunked one day. I dropped like 5 fish, I think. That was a terrible day.
Yeah.
That was the day where we got the picture of you holding the 3 fish like they were like the love of your life.
My girls.
And then 2020, there was one day you got skunked. You dropped a couple of fish, but I only caught 1. But we caught, aside from that, we caught fish. We at least hooked into fish every single freaking day.
Yeah.
Both years we went. So it's crazy. Yeah, Mike Klassen said
perfectly.
You
guys helped me out too, man, because one of the patterns you were using, particular style of lure you were using, you put me on. That's how I got my couple of biggest fish when I went there for a BFL Super Tournament in September after you guys, you know what I mean? So I pointed you in the right direction, and you guys returned a favor, you know what I mean, and gave me some suggestions on what to try, and it panned out, you know what I mean? So
nice, man. See?
Different times of the year, but same river,
All works out.
Wait, you tell my secret?
Yeah, I did. No, I didn't. I don't know. I don't remember.
No,
I think it was you, Andrew.
No, you did tell him
I told
that.
you.
Mike's here. Mike called it what do you call it? Stupid fishing?
No, he called me a jerk fishing. And I was like, well, jerk fishing's fucking working, so.
I told Mike and the rest of the Dragon Custom Tackle crew what he was doing, that Sheron, he told you. And they're all like literally, I think half of them, their response was ... So he was fishing like a jerk. I'm like, you can call it whatever you want. It still worked.
You're the only other person that knows about it besides them. So.
And I think Kristen, our friend Kristen, that's it.
Yeah, and that's it.
I swear to God, like nobody else we've told what he was doing, because it's fucking stupid.
I
but
put
it
on
works.
a clinic. It works.
But at the same time, you can't call it stupid. It works. So
I'm
it doesn't matter.
you. That's awesome. Yeah, because I remember you texting me. You're like, "What was that? What was that color?" I'm like, "The color." You're like, "All right."
Yep.
That was sick. That was cool. I'm glad it worked.
Cool. All right. Wrap it up. I mean, people are kind of dropping off, but honestly, this was a fantastic stream. Sheron,
Yeah,
thank you
man,
very
thanks
much,
for having
dude.
me, man.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
It was great.
Absolutely.
I've been getting texts through this, random messages. Like, everybody's really impressed with you. I mean, that's why we had you on. You're a good dude anyway, and we've talked quite a bit actually last couple of years since we really first met at the New England Expo.
Yep.
So finally glad we were able to make this work and have you on, man.
Yeah, get on the water, man. Yep. Get on the water.
And we'll make this work again too. It was great. A lot of great
Yeah, invite
feedback.
me again. I loved it.
Yep, good.
Yeah, we'll
I'm
definitely
happy.
do it again.
Yeah, maybe fresh off the open or something, with some new mindsets or whatever, after I come back from fishing on that level, you know what I mean? Maybe come back and capture my thoughts pretty quickly or whatever before they fade off, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
Yep. When and where is the next open? I forget. Is
next
it?
one is I'm leaving on July 23rd, so it's the last week of July. Competition days are Thursday and Friday, and hopefully I make the cut. Then the next one is on the week of September 11th, September 9th, I think, 9th or 10th on Thousand Islands. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
End of this month, Oneida, and then
That's right.
September Thousand Islands.
Nice.
I seriously, do you know Mike Zamp? Mike Zampese, is that his name?
It's Mike Zampese.
I think it's Mike Zampese. He's another guy that fishes all those opens. Is that who I was talking to? He was trying to convince me to fish the same opens as you guys, and I almost did it. I talked to Andrew about it a half dozen times. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm debating doing it, but as much as I love my boat, it just doesn't cut it for, like, I don't know, man. I feel like a 19-footer with a 200 fishing. What was the first one? The
James River.
the James River, and then Oneida, and then St. Lawrence. I'm like, you know what?
It's actually a pretty favorable schedule for us Northeast guys. The hardest one in terms of travel was James River, plus it was tidal, so a lot of guys wanted to survive in that one, knowing that they're going to be up in New York 4 or 5 hours away.
Right.
Smallmouth territory, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
That's why I
at
debated
the
doing
James
it.
River, you needed a decent-sized gas tank, so I only have 42 gallons in my boat. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get down there and still, play around with 10 to 15 miles of an area that I had fishing, because I pretty much had a wide area to fish this way. I wasn't going to get stuck in a particular part of the river where a lot of people are fishing at, you know what I mean? But I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it down there and still run my pattern and make it back. And then we had this gas crisis down there where it just people bought all the gas up at the gas stations, and the gas stations I called on the river were saying, hey, listen, we're going to give gas to our residents, we're not going to give it to other people. So I just couldn't make that gamble, you know what I mean? I think it cost me a check down there, but I was around some big fish on the main river where I think I'd have got 1 or 2 of those nicer fish. I'd have been fishing on the third day, so it wasn't bad, you know what I mean? But you definitely need to make a longer run to James River. So boat size wasn't really as important as your gas consumption was, down there, you know what I mean? Where now with these lakes here, the way the wind is, the longer the boat, the better, you know what I mean? There's just more room for error when you're dealing with larger waves, but don't ever think that your boat is too small and not powered. You just got to respect the limitations, In my club days, I had a 13-foot 9-inch boat, and no one wanted me to bring my boat to Winnipesaukee. Everyone was voicing their concerns that my boat's too small, I'm not gonna be able to get anywhere. So I let them talk me out of bringing my boat. When I got to Winnipesaukee, like, all the locals had small boats. They just stuck to the shoreline when they would travel. They didn't travel across the broads, you know what I mean? So I was mad that they talked me out of bringing my boat, because I'm like, you know what? I know my limitations. I got a small boat. I'm not going to cross the broad to go to Lee's Mills, but I can make it over to Smith Cove, you know what I mean?
Yep.
I can make it over to Elacoya, you know what I mean? So I'm fine, you know what I mean? So don't ever think that you can't compete with what you have. You just gotta, you can't think of what you don't have, you know what I mean? You really gotta make it work, you know what I mean? If you can't go fish grass, you gotta drag a tube on the bottom. Drew Carolina rig, you know what I mean? If you can't beat everyone in the race, that's okay. You may catch more fish at the rim than other people. So you got to really make your weakness become a strength versus, a hindrance for you to compete. You know what I mean? So I'm a big testament. It's not the boat that catches the fish. I've had all kinds of boats. I've been some really nice boats. The fishermen are just, horrible because they're not willing to go out of their comfort zone. So the more risk you take, with what you have, the more you're going to appreciate what you get, and you know exactly where you're coming from. I worked my way up from a smaller boat to my boat is all custom, designed for me. It's 100% custom, designed for me. You know what I mean? These little things that I did that are just designed for my size. And my goal was this boat has to get me as close to the classic as possible before I go get a new boat. The boat's 10 years old, but you can't quite tell that, you know what I mean? But my point is, work to get where you need to get, but don't let what you have stop you from getting where you got to go. You know what I mean? So
spot on.
take that to the bank.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better myself,
Nope.
man. That's a great way to end it. So,
Okay, guys.
everybody watching, thank you very much. Andrew, I'm going to let you sign it off. I'm going to kill it. Sheron, again, thank you for joining us, man. Greatly
man.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
thanks a lot.
I'll cut the call at the same time that I cut the stream, and we will see you all next week. Hopefully, I will at least have a regular video up sometime early next week. I already got like the first almost half of the rough edit done. So I'll have it done, and then I got Andrew's all of his PC stuff here this week. I'm gonna make him and his buddy Paul build it because I just don't have time. But his buddy does, and his buddy knows what he's doing.
Buddy's got the week off.
Oh, so Andrew will be up for next week. All right, shut her down, buddy.
All right, guys.
Take it easy, guys.
So tomorrow, next week, same time, same place. Sheron, thank you again for coming.
Here we go.
We're gonna do another show next week. Finally, 2 weeks in a row. But we will see you next week at 8 o'clock on Thursday.